Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is, I don't know what day it is. I think it's Thursday. I'm pretty sure it's Thursday, February 9th. It's day 100,000 of the Alec Murdaugh murder trial. He's accused of killing his wife and son. The state has found the longest route to prosecute this murder case, and it is slowly draining us all of our will to be patient. I'm glad I'm not a juror in this case, that's for sure, because it has been tedious, and we will see what happens today. Yesterday at the court is coming back into session. We are getting into session right on time this morning. The judge was tired of everybody's shit yesterday, so I'm not surprised. They ended court a little bit early because the prosecution didn't have it together, and I'm not surprised. We'll roll the intro after they say bring the jury. No, if you need to talk to the judge. Be in court and know if you need to talk to the judge. The court is ready. Oh, are we still on the vehicle witness chat? Are we still on the car guy? The FBI guy who can only say if the car's in lock or unlock? Is that what we're... They said, I will beg the court's indulgence. And the court's like, nah, fam, that's not what we're doing. Bring the jury. The attorneys aren't ready at all. And the court is like, bring the jury. Bring the jury. So it's time to bring the jury. I'm gonna bring the action. We're gonna bring the jury, and let's roll, because we're ready this morning, even if the lawyers aren't.
Hey there, I'm Emily D. Baker, the internet's go-to legal analyst, breaking down the legal side of the pop culture and entertainment stories we can't stop talking about. I'm a big fan of the cursey words. I've been a licensed attorney for over 17 years, but this is not legal advice. This is where the law nerds unite to talk about facts, not... Let's get into it.
We're on day 14. The judge is clearly annoyed. Oh, I've got the wrong microphone on, y'all. Hold on. That's better. Hopefully that's better. Do we sound like me again? All right, thank you. The no court audio, that's annoying. Okay, let me get the court audio. The judge said bring the jury. You should have the court audio. Let me make sure that you do now. There's no court audio in court at the moment, so that's not going to help. But let me make sure that you guys should be hearing it now. So there was rustling in court. That was on me. We're in the mobile streaming setup, and it's a whole situation, and I was setting up the mobile streaming setup at like 2 a.m. So I beg the chat's indulgence. What you missed.
Thank you. Good morning.
The attorney saying, I beg the court's
Welcome,
indulgence.
ladies and gentlemen. Day 14.
And the court saying, nah.
Cross-examination continues. You may proceed.
So this is Agent Hauk. Day 14. This judge is so annoyed.
Good morning, sir.
That they're not ready.
And this will be very brief, I believe, but just very
Don't
briefly.
promise that.
Yesterday we covered that it was difficult to download the information from the vehicle because it was encrypted
I've
by
got
the
thoughts on this.
manufacturer, correct?
Yes, the encryption was done by the manufacturer.
And you essentially had to reverse engineer the device using a test vehicle.
That's correct.
And looks like you got a lot of good data out of it, but there's some of it that isn't quite clear. Like we said, that we didn't exactly know what necessarily
he's
would
like, we said.
trigger something like a system startup.
Correct.
But
We're on
some of the other ones would be pretty obvious, like
FBI agent
engine
Dwight
on, obviously
Falkofske.
means somebody cranked the car. Correct?
Yeah, the engine was turned
Right.
on at that point.
Okay.
FBI
I'm not
car
going
guy.
to go through that spreadsheet again. I just wanted
thank God.
to clarify that. And how long did this process take you, this reverse engineering process?
Our whole analysis took just about 1 year.
Wow.
Did you
It's a
hear the
long
attorney
time
say,
to-
wow?
It's a hard effort.
Here's the thing, the defense
Will you
is
be
going
able
to
to
use that.
reuse this work on other 2021 Chevy Suburbans?
Some of the tools we developed will be reusable.
And I asked before, and I guess no one reached out to the manufacturer for assistance in this process?
Our group did not.
The attorneys
Do
are
you
going
know
to use
why?
that to their
I mean, I think yesterday you said
advantage.
in the past there wasn't, they weren't very helpful, but it seems like the worst they could do is say no. Do you know why it was decided to not reach out?
For our unit, I believe that our attempt is to get the data ourselves without outside assistance. In many cases, we end up finding data that even the manufacturer doesn't know is there.
That's terrifying. The FBI's like,
Now I want to turn to
they
what,
don't know how much we know, and we don't want them to know how
technical
much
issue
we know.
was resolved.
Terrifying.
And I'm going to show you a printout that has been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 90. And I believe you've had a chance to review this.
Yes, sir, I've
The defense is
reviewed
going
this
to say
material.
the prosecution
you
had no
recognize
evidence,
it.
so they spent a year
Yes,
trying
this
to
is from our
find
results.
this.
And what is this?
This is a list of events that were recorded from the vehicle. There was a category we called events that just listed times that something interacted or something occurred with the vehicle.
Randy asked,
And
what, if
on
any,
this printout,
pertinent
the
information
only
will we hear
event-
today?
I guess listed here
Let's be
are
optimistic, it's early, but who knows?
iPhones or something called Richard's iPhone earlier on connecting to the vehicle. Is that correct?
I'm going to switch feeds when we get a
I see from the
pause.
first page here, yeah, there's one
It's
that's
just-
labeled
it's
iPhone with
very
a
hard on the mobile
Bluetooth
setup
MAC
to switch
address,
feeds.
and it's a device connection timestamp.
If you,
So I will, it's just gonna
you've
take me a
seen this
minute.
before in your review, and you can look at it now. Do you see any, is this pretty much all device connections, phones connecting to the Bluetooth in the car?
Yes,
We
I
are
see
on-
other Bluetooth devices connecting as well.
We are on cross this
And
morning.
is it, just to be clear on this, the only phone connecting in the month of June, at least, is one named iPhone that has a phone number ending in 1227, is that correct?
The phone number itself is not listed on this page. It is the Bluetooth MAC address that it's identified by.
Is the, under connected devices, right above the word events where it says iPhone and there's a MAC address, is the IMSI number that's listed there,
IM
803?
do you mean IMEI?
1227, is that the phone number?
That's for the iPhone, correct?
Okay. And that's the phone that was connecting in June?
Okay, is somebody going to tie together whose IMEI
That appears
number
to
that
be
is?
the only one that connected in June.
Only one IMEI number in Alec Murdaugh's work car. I'm not surprised by that.
Is this something that you also had to reverse engineer out of the vehicle?
Yes, all of the data we found was unknown prior to taking a look at the test vehicle.
Now, I'll tell you about my
And the event that
flight.
we're looking at here, device
a break,
connection, that is
because-
the phone connecting to the Bluetooth in the vehicle so that,
thing.
you know, you could use it for whatever goes over the Bluetooth connection, whether it's phone calls or apps or whatever, depending on.
Yeah, and it indicates a connection event from the Bluetooth to the vehicle's infotainment system.
And up here in connected devices, does this indicate that this iPhone was, I guess, paired to the vehicle?
That's correct.
Okay. And so, in your experience, if your phone is paired to your vehicle and Bluetooth is on and it connects, that typically happens automatically when you get in and turn it on if your phone is with you?
Yeah, if there's a device that is registered, paired to the vehicle, it will automatically connect to that.
Challenge.
vehicle.
It's supposed to automatically connect. How often does that work for y'all? My phone does not always automatically connect. I have a very intelligent car, or
And
at least
finally,
it
I
says
just
it
want to
is.
ask about, you had mentioned in your direct testimony that there's sometimes you can get location data.
Not
Were
every
you able to
car
get
has
location
OnStar.
data from the vehicle?
From the infotainment system, we had limited location data, and there was some location data recovered from the OnStar module.
And do you recall, was there any location data recovered for the day of June 7th, 2021?
There was no location data recovered on June 7th.
That's so
And in
helpful.
fact, there wasn't any for June 6th or June 8th either, is that correct?
I'd have to verify those dates, but in this essence, on the day of interest in June 7th, there was no location data.
With OnStar, there should be. I don't know why they couldn't collect that. It's odd to me, but maybe it's not odd. I don't know, man. It's just,
Your Honor, apologize, I forgot to, please move Defendant's Exhibit 90 into evidence, I believe, without objection.
at least you remembered at some point, counsel. It's,
No further questions, Your Honor.
we're all exhausted. No.
From the stage.
Yes.
Thank you. You may step down.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for just stopping. Perfect. No recross, or no redirect, no recross. Going to our next witness.
Calling next witness.
State calls Chris Wilson.
All right, we've heard some of this testimony before. This should at least be interesting with Chris Wilson testifying. For those of you who have not already seen his testimony in the 404s, he's the one with the missing money. I'm going to go ahead and switch feeds as he gets up to the stand. You're going to have to look at my face for a moment while I do that, because it is not as easy.
Do you swear or affirm the name testimony you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you
the
God?
mobile setup. So give me 1
You will
second.
please, sir,
You can still
proceed
hear
and
court, I hope.
State your name and spell the last name. Yeah.
It is my hope that you can still hear court. So we are trying to pull this up. He is sitting on the stand.
My name is James Christopher Wilson, Wilson.
Nobody goes by.
I go by Chris.
Yeah, it seems that everybody goes by something
morning,
other
Mr. Wilson.
than their name.
Good morning.
If you would, tell the jury just a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, where you went to school, and what you do for a living.
Tell us all about you.
Well, as I said a moment ago, my name is Chris Wilson. I
your
grew up in
favorite
Bamberg, about 35, 40 minutes west of here. Graduated school there, went to school up in Spartanburg for college.
All right, we're gonna have to switch, and that's.
And there have been varying associates that have worked with me, or at one
That's
time I
very
had a
loud.
couple partners, and
He's talking
one
about his
partner
law practice.
left, and then one partner moved, and so we split up as a result of that. But you know, I've had my own practice since '98 with different people coming and going.
And what's the name of the practice?
Right now, it's Wilson Law Group.
Wilson Law Group.
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury what kind of legal work you do, please.
I do all kind of cases, but over the last 10 to 15 years, I've primarily concentrated on just personal injury cases. People that are injured in
There we go.
wrecks or hurt at work, tractor trailer wrecks, especially a lot of those.
All right, hopefully the sound is okay.
Personal injury cases.
Personal
Do
injury
you know the
cases.
defendant?
I do.
Do you see him in the courtroom here today?
I do.
Can you point him out for the jury?
Yes, sir. Redhead with the glasses over there between Mr. Griffin and Mr. Harpootlian.
Your Honor, can the record reflect he's identified the defendant?
Yes.
Tell me how you came to know the defendant.
I've known Alec since we were in high school. I think I was a year younger than him, but Bamberg and Hampton are only about 30 miles apart, and so we had several mutual friends, people that I was closer to back then, but got to know and be around him some then. We had played some ball against each other, and I think even played on the same ball team one summer. So I knew him a little bit through high school, but not much. Didn't keep in touch at all when we were in college. Started law school at the same time together, and became
Like
really
USC.
close friends through law school. Lived together a little bit of that time. Finished law school. I moved to Greenville. He moved to Beaufort, and you know, we would keep in touch some, but we were a little bit separated. And then when I moved back to Bamberg and he ultimately moved back to Hampton, we got much, much closer. Our wives had known each other through college, and so they became closer friends. Our kids grew up together. You know, we just spent a lot of time together personally, and then he and I did a number of cases together. We worked professionally together.
Did y'all become close friends over the years?
Yes, sir.
Best friends?
Yes, sir. I considered him to be one of my best, if not my best friend. Yes, sir.
Did you get to know his family?
I consider
Very
him-
much. Not just his wife, not just Maggie, not just Paul, but, you know, Buster and his parents, you know, his in-laws, his brothers and sisters, his mom and daddy. I mean, the whole family. And they knew my family, or he knew my family.
This will be interesting testimony
Y'all did things
because
together socially?
of the
Yes, sir.
of the devastation.
We had kids the same age. Our kids are close. We did a lot of things together, and we worked together.
Up until about June of 2021, did you talk to the defendant almost every day?
Yes, sir. I didn't see Alec all the time, not every day, maybe not even once a week, but we talk by phone probably pretty much every day. Several times a day sometimes. Sometimes just about, you know, Gamecocks and football and baseball and whatever.
Everything
Sometimes
comes
about
back to the
kids, sometimes
Gamecocks.
about business, sometimes
I've
about
learned
cases
anything
we
in
were
this
working on.
trial.
Just all kind of stuff.
All things circle back to the Gamecocks.
Did you feel like you knew him pretty well?
I did.
You mentioned y'all worked some cases together. How many cases together did you work over the years?
Well, my firm, when I first started out by myself, was smaller. I didn't have a lot of resources. I was just getting started. His firm was bigger with a lot more resources and a lot more lawyers. They handled some bigger cases that I really wasn't capable of handling together on my own. And so when it first started out, I was associating him and his firm a lot more often, probably over the course of, these last 20 years, probably 25 or 30 cases. But it slowed down. I mean, as my firm got bigger and I became more experienced and could handle a lot more things on my own, it was less and less often that I would associate his firm. But if I ever felt like it could benefit my client with either the type of case that I was handling or where the case was going to be brought to have his firm involved, I would call Alec.
How many times do you think you worked
So
a
he
case
trusted
with him or
him
shared a case
and
with him
relied
over
on
the
him.
years?
Of course he did.
Probably 30, maybe more.
That's a lot of
When did that
cases.
start, you think?
I opened my own, I didn't do it any until I opened my own office in '98, and I don't remember exactly when he moved back to Hampton from Beaufort, but it was probably starting in the early 2000s or somewhere thereabouts.
And were all of these plaintiffs' cases where y'all are representing a plaintiff who had had some alleged injuries or something like that, or suffered some sort of harm?
Yes, sir. I mean, there may have been, one or two here or there that was something different than a personal injury case, but almost everything was personal injury cases.
And were all these cases worked on contingency?
Yes, sir.
And can you explain to the jury what a contingency is, how a lawyer gets paid with a contingency type case?
For our lovely
Sure.
international crew, the
A
Gamecocks are a
contingency fee
college
is
football team for
basically
University
the
of South
attorney
Carolina.
and the client enter into an agreement on the front end of the case. When the client retains the attorney,
It's a very big deal.
there are no attorney's fees up front.
They all went to
There's no
USC.
prepayment. There's no hourly billing arrangement. Basically, the attorney has an
Not the
interest in the
Trojans
case.
USC, the Gamecocks
So
USC.
that when the case resolves, the attorney receives as a fee a portion of the recovery. Generally, it's a third, sometimes 40%, depending on whether suit has to be filed or what type of case it is. But basically, the lawyer is taking all the risk in pursuing the case. If it doesn't work out well, the lawyer doesn't get paid for their time, and generally the lawyer fronts all the costs in pursuing the case for court fees, depositions, experts, all of that type of stuff. And so
Just
at
like
the
Tom
end, if there's a
Doherty.
recovery, the attorneys repaid their fee contingent on a successful outcome and repaid whatever costs are advanced in the case.
Those costs and expenses, the cost of litigating the case, hiring an expert, travel, taking depositions,
Gets
court
expensive.
costs, things like that.
Yes, it gets very expensive.
Do those come out of the lawyer's 33% or 40%
Oh,
of the
no.
recovery, or
Oh,
are
no,
those
no.
recovered separately?
Oh, those come
from
after,
the,
Creighton. You know that they
lawyer's
do.
fees?
Those come after.
Separately and in addition to the fee.
After the lawyer's
In the
fees.
cases that you've worked with Alec over the years, was he with PMPED during those cases?
Yes, sir. I don't believe I associated him on any cases when he was in Beaufort. It was not until he returned to Hampton.
If you are in your firm and Alec is in his firm and y'all are sharing a case and ultimately you're successful, there's a settlement, there's a trial verdict, and you get a recovery, how do you go about splitting that fee?
All of that's agreed to up on the front at the beginning of the case. So, for instance, a client comes in and hires me for whatever reason, whatever type case. If I look at it and decide that I could use some help, either because there's a lawyer that knows that area of law better than I do, or maybe they're more local to the case, or maybe I just need some extra manpower, whatever it is. When I associate that lawyer and his firm, we make an agreement at the beginning as to what the fee split will be, and the client approves that and signs off on it. It's generally 50-50 on almost all the cases. I think on every case I ever worked with this firm, it was a 50-50 split on the fees.
In those cases that you worked with Alec over the years up until one at the end, did your office typically handle the disbursement of the fees when the settlement money came in?
Yes, sir. I mean, I've gone back through all my files, and with the exception of one or two cases that I think were a little bit different than normal, his firm had part of the family who had lost a loved one, and I had part of the family that had lost a loved one. And instead of them having a dispute about who was going to control and handle the case, we decided to work together, and so the firms worked together. And everything may have gone through them on those cases, but on cases that I associated his firm on, that I went to them to bring them into the case, I would generally handle the disbursements, yes, sir.
All right, and when we say handle the disbursements, does that mean your office would handle actually cutting the checks to the client as well as to his firm for their share of the lawyer's fees, as well as their share of any expenses to be reimbursed?
Yes, sir. When the money would come in, whether it was by a settlement or a verdict that had been paid, the money would come to my office and it would have to sit in my account for the appropriate amount of time. And then when checks were ready to be written, I would write the checks to his firm for their fees and for their cost, to my firm for my fees and my cost, to any medical bills or liens or anything had to be paid, and to the client for their money.
And you
Okay.
would
We're getting just through how plaintiff's law works,
write
so
the
they
checks
understand
for his share
the
of the
theft
fees to the
a bit
firm,
better.
is that correct?
Yes, sir, to PMPED.
Objection. Is the
Peters,
court providing
Murdaugh,
Aquafina?
Parker, Dietrich, and Melville.
Can we do better on that? Maybe. He's just taking a pause. We will try to get to super
When you would
chats
write
as he
those
slows
checks,
down.
to his
Because this
firm, would
witness
there
has
be
already
one check or
testified
two?
once,
Would you
this is
put
going to
the
move
fees and
pretty
his
quickly.
share of reimbursed costs in one check together, or would you write
So
two
that's-
separate checks?
Starting out, I think we would include, not just for his firm, but for my firm, fees and cost would be in the same check. And then, more than 10 years ago or so, and maybe even longer than that, we started doing it in two separate checks.
I agree, Chad.
just to
At
keep-
least it's
to
not
keep the
Dasani.
accounting of it easier to keep up with.
It is. It's better
what
than
part of,
Dasani.
Payment was
I
fees
don't
and what
love
part of payment was
Aquafina.
cost. So,
It-
over the last
Or
15 years, it's been
Dasani.
two checks.
Do you have a staff member who helps you? Who's kind of your main staff member that might handle some of these?
Who's your right
disbursements?
hand?
I have several different staff people that help me handle cases and disbursements. I have a bookkeeper that keeps
trying to
up
get
with
to
the
who's
checking
your
accounts and
legal
writes
secretary
all
or
the checks
paralegal.
that I instruct her to write, and then I'm the only person with signatory authority. And I have a staff member that helps me work cases and actually helps me put together disbursement sheets and check medical lien balances and who's owed what money and those type things.
And who is that person you're referring to?
Vicky is the person that helps me do all of that.
So for those asking about how many more 404 witnesses, we still have Palmetto State Bank,
Mack Trucks.
and we still
Yes, sir.
have
I've
the
contacted
beach
Alec and his
lawyer
firm to get
Tinsley.
involved and work with me and another lawyer on.
So at
on
least
cases
two
on
at a
that.
minimum.
All right,
Two.
and tell the jury just a little bit about the case without getting into too much detail. What kind of case was it?
So lawyer
Without getting into
contacted
too much
me
detail.
about a wreck that a client of his had been involved in. A drive shaft out of a Mack truck had fallen into the interstate as the vehicles were traveling down the road. This gentleman's vehicle, along with a bunch of other vehicles, hit this drive shaft, and he was injured. So this lawyer, it was a trucking case when he first contacted me and looked at it, and that's a lot of what I do. So he called me for some help with that.
Okay.
And one of
so
Gloria
you got involved in this
Satterfield's sons.
particular
So we've got
case?
at least
As you
three
looked at
more
the particular case,
at
did
a
you
minimum.
decide to involve the defendant?
I did very quickly after looking at it. He, this other lawyer.
Oh, yeah, we're
and I
at least
both
another 2
realized
more
that
weeks.
This case was probably a products liability
least.
case, that the drive shaft shouldn't have just fallen out of the truck for no reason like that.
That's fair.
And that there might be something to do with a defect in the truck. And we found some information about a recall or a potential recall, and I knew that's what Alec and his firm specialized in, those type cases, so I called him and asked him to get involved. We were pushing some deadlines to bring in all the parties that we needed to, so it was important to get somebody involved in it fast and knew what they were doing.
And did he agree to get in on this particular case?
Sounds like most people know that drive shafts shouldn't just fall out of
So you
cars,
got
but
three
that's
attorneys
fair.
in there who are going to split the fee, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury again, without getting too much into the weeds, tell the jury a little bit about how the litigation went. Did
Creighton,
y'all
you don't know the
ultimately
meaning
try
of
the
without
case
getting
and-
too much
and
into the
kind of
weeds.
Set up how you ultimately got to that point?
Objection.
So
Assumes
we actually
facts, not
brought two
evidence.
cases. We brought one case for the wife of the gentleman that was injured in the wreck for what are called loss of consortium claims. That generally is just the loss of a spouse, their loss of the services of their other spouse. Maybe that spouse can't do all the things around the home they used to do, or they can't be quite the husband or the wife that they were before. So we brought a claim for the wife for loss of consortium, and we brought a separate case for the husband for his personal injuries. Not to get too technical, but the wife's case, Mack Trucks didn't answer the papers like they were supposed to, and so they went into default on that case, and that put them in a really bad spot. On the husband's case, they answered the papers and initially contested the case, but after getting Alec and his firm involved in the case, we started doing discovery, which means we were asking for a bunch of documentation and things, and I'm not sure that they just didn't want us looking any further. I
appreciate that. We were doing discovery. We were asking for
us, and we had communications with them about ways to try to pursue the case outside of the traditional going through all of that and going to a jury trial. COVID had hit, and so things were slowed up in the court, and ultimately we reached an agreement to try both of those cases together in front of a judge without a jury. Both parties waived any rights to appeal.
which is fair.
Mack Trucks admitted liability, and we agreed to waive punitive damages. I
So they
think
did
that's
a
the
damages
structure we
trial.
got it under.
Let me ask you two quick questions
They did a
about that.
damages
You said
trial.
that COVID had hit, and
With
like the
they
rest
did a
of the world,
damages
that
trial
slowed up
without
everything in
punitives.
court, correct?
The
Very
punishment
much.
ones.
And, some things were moving, but because things were slowed up in court, that might slow up the ability to get verdicts and settlements and that sort of thing. To some extent, COVID had an effect on everybody, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, look at the Gerardi firm.
And then you mentioned in this particular case, you ultimately agreed for both parties to waive the right to appeal, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And did that have the effect of meaning that whatever verdict was issued, it wouldn't be tied up in the courts for a long time, the money would go ahead and be paid?
Yes, sir.
Carolyn, nobody asked if it was
Did y'all,
unusual that the car didn't have
eventually
that info.
try
I don't
case
think
in
they
front of a
knew.
judge instead of a jury?
We did.
They said it was
in
very hard to parse.
January of 2021, first
January.
couple weeks.
And did the defendant try that case with you?
He did.
And did y'all ultimately get a verdict?
We did. We got verdicts in both cases.
And do you remember how much those verdicts were?
Combined, they were $5.5 million. I believe it was $4 million on the husband's case. He had passed away, I believe, within about 4, 5, or 6 months of us going to trial. So I think it was $4 million on behalf of his estate for his injuries and what that had cost for him. And then I believe it was $1.5 million on the wife's loss of
Creighton, I don't think is listening to the answers. I think he just has a list of questions. It's kind of frustrating
Who
to
did the
listen
closing
to.
argument in that case?
Alec
For
did.
y'all's side?
Alec did.
The defendant did?
He said Alec did twice,
Did he get
Creighton.
emotional in closing?
He did.
Why does this matter?
Did he spend much time with the husband in that case?
Oh,
I don't
because
think
he's
Alec
stealing
had spent
from
a lot of
them.
time with the gentleman. He had been kind of sick towards the end, and I don't know that Alec had spent a lot of time with him. He had spent a lot of time with the wife, and especially throughout that week in trial. I mean, it was an emotional case. They had serious loss.
That's why. It's getting to the theft. And getting to his ability to just see that he's emotional.
Closing
or
argument,
fake
that's
that
when
he's
the lawyer
emotional.
gets up and sort of summarizes the case to the judge or the jury,
And then
depending on what kind of
steal.
case it is.
Yes, sir. Honestly, you do more than summarize. You argue.
You argue.
Yeah, you put your heart into it, and you tell the judge or the jury why it is you hope and think they do what you're asking them to do.
It's a good summary of closing
Said the
argument.
verdict was how
Chris?
much in total?
5.5 million combined.
And what does that mean the fees were going to be for the 3 lawyers involved in this case?
I don't remember the exact split for everybody. I know that my fee was going to be like $791,000, and the fee payable to Alec's firm was going to be $792,000.
And do you recall?
And I
when
don't
y'all-
remember the third attorney right off the top of my
So
head.
when we were talking about the fact
Do you
that the
remember when you received
PMPED pays
that $5.5 million
$125,000
into your
a
trust
year
account?
salary?
Yes, sir.
These are the bonuses we're talking
Part
about.
of it came in by wire, but it was a smaller part, and I want to say that was about.
I forgot the goat. I forgot to
We
pack
tried
the
it in the
goat.
first part of January. The judge didn't issue a ruling
It's not
right on the
totes and
spot. It
goats.
took a couple weeks for him to issue his ruling, which is normal. And then within a couple weeks of that, after some back and forth with Mack Truck's attorney about whether they were going to file any kind of post-trial motions, or they could have tried to file an appeal and see where it went, even though we had an agreement up front, we were worried that they might get around that. But anyway, after a couple weeks of back and forth and a wire was sent for part of the money, right, probably middle of February, and then shortly after that, a check arrived for the rest of the money.
Do you remember when that was?
I don't remember exactly. I want to say the last few days of, no, it's probably the last few days of February, somewhere around in there. 2021.
Hold on one second.
I saw that Rob got his pickle. Rob's pickle looked pale in the screenshots that I saw, and I think Rob now has a fleet of goats. I'm not quite sure how that works.
Your Honor, For the record, I just want to object to this line of questioning under 404.
Jim, we're in the middle of it,
403,
dude.
And to this exhibit, I do not have any additional objections other than those that were previously made.
I don't know what the exhibit is.
Sure.
Your Honor, this is
I did. I forgot my goat.
related to the in-camera matters that have been addressed.
We'll see what the exhibity is. For those of you asking, I am traveling, so that is what I'm doing. I have some stuff that I'm doing this evening with friends, and then I'm going to a concert tomorrow, and I'm here with you streaming all in between it. Again, the judge is so frustrated. You can hear it in his voice. He's a patient judge, but he is
No objection.
done with their shit. This trial was supposed to be done tomorrow,
As admitted into evidence as States 450, and see if you
and we are
recognize that.
nowhere close. Nowhere close to being done. We are in this shit.
Yes, sir. This looks like a snapshot of a text string that.
Brittany, thank you. I got a bunch of emails yesterday. I
It's
have
just communication
them.
between
I flagged
me and
them.
Alex.
I just can't pull them up, but I saw it.
In
Thank
the middle
you.
of that particular text, that particular page, there's some text, and do you see the date on that?
March the 10th. This would be 2021.
All right, and that's a text from the defendant, is that correct?
Yes, sir. It looks like we had been talking about getting together to play golf, and then he texted me. You want me to read it?
Go ahead and read that to the jury, what your text conversation right there is.
March 10th. I need to get checked today. If it's just too much for you, I will deal with it.
Huh.
And what's your response?
I'm working on it.
So that's March 10th of 2021, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
May I have the Elmo, please?
I wonder what else was going on. There's like so much to this story we're missing. But I need to get checked today. I just wonder what else.
Let's talk about that text.
What
a little
else
bit.
was going
Does that
on?
Text help you kind of get an idea
These texts are
roughly
new.
when the disbursement check came in on the Mack truck case?
Yes, sir. So by our rules, the Supreme Court, any check that's of a certain size has to be in your trust account for at least 10 days before you can disperse. And this was a sizable check, so I was going to wait more than 10 days just to make sure there weren't any problems. So if that's March the 10th, like I said, those checks, the final amount of that money would have come in sometime, towards the end of February. Because I think I waited 12 to 15 days, as I recall.
You said it's a sizable amount of money. This was a pretty big recovery, correct?
Yes, sir.
I imagine you contacted the other attorney and you contacted the defendant to say, hey, got the money in.
I did.
Did you when you contacted the defendant about that, what, if anything, did he say?
Great news, good. I told him that I was going to sit on it a little bit longer than normal to disperse, just because if it had all come in a wire, I could have dispersed immediately because those are considered received funds. But with it being a check, I wanted to wait. And so I let both of them know
That's
that I had
fair.
received the money and that I wasn't going to do it on the 10th day.
He was being
but that I would do it
cautious.
shortly thereafter.
Did the defendant ask you to do anything when it came time to dispersing his firm's share of the funds?
I wanted to
He
wait
did,
as fair.
yes, sir.
All right, tell me about that conversation.
When it came time to disperse the checks, and I was calling him and the other lawyer to let them know that I'd have the checks ready, I guess somewhere around March the 10th, Alec told me that he was going to put the monies into an annuity, that he was going to put his fees in an annuity. He called it a structure, but in essence, he explained he was going to put those monies into an annuity, and that the checks needed to be made payable directly to him instead of to his firm so that he could do that.
Okay. And did he explain to you why he was going to do that?
He had just indicated that he was putting money away. He indicated he was concerned about the boat case, and that
He was
he was going
hiding
to put
it.
some monies in an annuity or into a structure.
Putting it away is not
You say
exactly what he was
concerned about
doing.
the boat case. What exactly what was he concerned about? What did he
Hiding
tell you
it.
he was concerned about?
Them taking
He
his money.
was concerned about his exposure in the boat case.
Yes. Exposure means.
Yes, sir.
Exposure means
You were
Creighton.
aware that the defendant had been sued civilly in the boat accident case?
Yeah, I didn't know if he had been sued himself, but I knew there was a lawsuit going on involving, and I believe I did know that he was himself sued at that time, yes, sir.
Exposure means,
So this was different than how you normally did things, correct?
Very much.
Did he have any further explanation to you as to why this would be okay? Why this was all right to do?
He told me that he had already cleared it with the partners in his firm. I mean, he was a partner himself with the authority to do things for the firm, but he told me he had already cleared it with his partners in the firm, and that he was going to, that they were going to put the monies on the books, and that they would be accounted for at the end of the year whenever they did their year-end settle up, that he would already be accounted for as having been paid these monies already.
Looking back at this exhibit that's now up on the screen,
yeah, Creighton didn't close the loop on what financial exposure means. And
on March 10th,
Chris is a PI lawyer. He could have
450,
very
he says,
thoroughly
I need to
gotten
get the check today.
into
Is that
that.
correct?
Yes, sir.
And did he tell you any more about why he needed to get the check today?
I spoke to him on the phone that day, and he just asked me if the checks were going to be ready that day. As I recall, I was on the road. I wasn't sure I was going to make it back to the office or not. My bookkeeper was getting the checks ready, and I spoke to him on the phone and told him that if I got back in time to sign the checks, I'd have them ready that day. He told me he'd like to get them that day, yes,
The
sir.
boat case lawyer will testify, and that's when they
He
will
told
hear
you
a little
that
more
he
about
had
it,
already
but not
cleared
a
this with the
ton.
partners. They were okay with him getting this money right now instead of having to wait till the end of the year.
He told me that the partners were aware that the monies were being paid to him, that he was going to put them into annuities, and that they would be accounted for on the books of the firm as already having been credited as paid towards him.
So he told you everything was on the up and up and it was fine.
Did you believe the defendant when he told you these things?
Yes, sir. I didn't have any reason not to.
Your best friend?
Yes, sir.
Did you trust him?
I did.
Did you really know him at all?
Didn't set off any red flags to you at this point?
him?
No, sir.
Chris, did you
And
really
I'd
know
known
him?
him for 30-plus years and
Creighton wants to say it.
didn't have any reason not to trust him.
Creighton wants to say it, but did you really?
Did you ultimately initially write a couple of fee checks?
I did, yes, sir. I think I wrote one check in the gentleman's case and one check in the lady's case. And then the gentleman's check was rewritten into two checks. These
For
were,
who?
when I say these checks, I'm talking about fees that were paid.
Who were the two checks written to?
I'm going to show you what's previously been marked as State's Exhibit 345.
Oh, he's going to show the checks. He loves the checks. Look at these checks. Look, checks. If only he had enough evidence to wave around in the rest of
Total
the
fees that we're
case.
going to go to Ellick in this case were how much?
$792,000.
And he asked you to write the checks out to who?
To him,
Him directly.
Richard Alexander Murdaugh,
This is the
Instead of
check
what?
that
instead of PMPED or the law
Fluttered.
firm.
Which would be the normal practice.
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm going to show you what's been marked as 345 and see if you recognize this document.
this is the check
That's 345.
that toppled
I do.
the House of Cards.
What is that?
So this is a check that was
Fluttering out of a
initially
file.
written to Richard Alexander Murdaugh Esquire for $600,000 on March 10th, 2021. This says fees on the bottom. This would be the fees on the gentleman's case for payable to his firm, which Alec told me to write to him. This check was voided and rewritten into two separate checks.
All right.
It's marked void.
All right, Your Honor, this time I would move to admit State's 345 into evidence.
Your Honor, we do not have any additional objections to that document.
Thanks, Jim. You know, the judge is getting impatient with how long we're here, but the judge did know we were going to end up with a trial within a trial when he
Check
admitted
is,
all of this evidence.
$600,000.
Here we are.
all right, and again, there were two cases, so there were going to be
They
two
don't need to
separate checks.
prove
Is
it
that
this
correct?
Yes, sir.
much.
This was just the fees on the gentleman's
Knocking over my
case.
And that
pens
would be
early
how
this
much
morning.
Total?
Total was $792,
But this one is?
$600,
And then the one for the other one?
$192.
192, okay. All right, and so you initially write this check. Did you deliver this to the defendant, or what happened?
I didn't deliver any of the checks. I believe he had somebody pick them up that day from his office, a runner or something like that. But no, so this check was voided out, and we rewrote 2 separate checks made payable to Richard.
Oh, the judge, I saw the chat
Why did you do
asking,
that? Why did you void this?
Can the
one
judge
for
stop it?
600 and
No.
then write 2 separate checks?
I'm going to be wiggly all
I
day,
called
sorry.
Alec and told him, or when we were talking, and I told him I thought the checks would be ready. He instructed me that he was doing 3
don't-
separate annuities, and so it would need to be in 3 checks.
don't think they need this
and that
much
check would
detail
need to
on
be
this.
made out in 2 different checks that totaled $600,000.
A bunch of different annuities, huh?
Yes, sir, it wasn't all going into the same annuity or the same place.
Okay, which we all really knew from Annette's testimony and from Jeannie Seckinger's testimony. We are getting very deep into the weeds. They could have just gone directly, he had the check recut. Okay, the problem is the check was in his personal name, not that it was cut and then recut. And I just think that the jury's got to be like, okay, well, you've got a ton of evidence here. Where's the rest of it then? This is a lot of
So you
evidence. This is
recut
what a lot of evidence looks like.
into 2
Where's the
checks,
rest
is
of
that
it?
correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm going to show you what's been marked as. Because
the rest of it is not this clear.
See if you recognize that set of documents, please.
Yes, sir, I do.
All right, just flip through it real quick.
Can't even tell you what they are.
Well, just flip through it first, if you would, please.
So, we are gonna be here.
Yes, sir, I recognize all of this.
All right, and
For a
tell the jury
while.
what those are, please.
So the top document is the $192,000 check dated March the 10th, 2021, made payable to Richard Alexander Murdaugh Esquire. And on the bottom it says fees. That would have been the fees on the ladies' loss of consortium case.
Okay.
The back of it, the rest of it's just the back of the check. Looks like it's endorsed, Bank of America deposit only, a signature that looks like Alec, but it's kind of scribbled and says Bank of America.
Okay.
The next page is a check for $225,000 dated March 10th, 2021, payable to Richard Alexander Murdaugh Esquire. And on the bottom it says fees. This would be part of the rewrite of that $600,000 check.
We're just
Same
tracking the checks
type of
because that's the
endorsement
evidence they
paperwork on the
have.
back.
But the jury's gonna
And
see
then
them going,
the third
here's
check
this, and
is
here's
a
this,
check
and
dated
here's
March
this.
10th, 2021.
Those all connect.
For
Where's the
$375,000 made payable to Richard Alexander Murdaugh Esquire, and on the bottom it says fees. And that would be the second part of the rewrite of that $600,000 check for the fees in the gentleman's case.
Under your scars says the
Your Honor,
FBI
this
data on the
time,
check
I
was
move to
somewhat
admit
disappointing.
States 346 in evidence.
I would challenge that
We
and
don't
say it
have
was
any
incredibly
additional objections, Your Honor.
They're
disappointing.
admitted.
All right, I'm going to show you what's been marked as States
There's good info there,
347,
but the
so you
state
can
did not present
recognize
it
those 2
easily
documents,
to understand, and clearly, that timeline is tough. For those asking the pronunciation of
I
the
do.
defendant name,
please. Tell
all,
me what those are.
the limit does not
So these are
exist.
2 checks from my firm made payable to Peters, Murdoch, Parker, Ellsworth, and Dietrich. The memo part is redacted, but I know what these are. So these were cost reimbursement checks in both of these cases. One check for the gentleman's case and one check for the wife's case.
Okay.
They're dated May 13th of 2021.
I don't know why we need all of
Made
this.
payable to the law firm. One of them is for $14,619.13, and one of them is
It
for the
feels like
same
they're just
amount
trying to
except
force them to
14 cents.
plea
All right, tell me the
on
date on those
the
expense
financial
checks, please.
cases.
May 13th
Which
of
is not what this is
2021.
for.
And go back if you would, and let's again remind the jury what the date of the fee checks are, particularly
Oh, I have
after they
Starbucks
were
coming. I'm so
recut
glad.
At the defendant's request.
March 10th of 2021.
Let me put these up on the screen real quick.
Great,
Your Honor,
great.
I'll move in States 347, please.
No objection.
They're admitted.
These are exhibits that were marked earlier, but
All right,
again,
we're at States 346, and
they know he stole from clients. They know. The jury
this
knows.
is the check for $192,000, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
They know.
And the date is March 10th, is that right?
Yes, sir. That's the day that all 3 lawyers' checks were cut to be paid.
And Rhonda, this is the
Same
problem,
date
because
that
if I'm the
text,
jury, I'm going, this
jury
is what
said,
evidence looks like.
Yes, sir.
Great. Where's the rest?
Next page, this is the check for how much?
$225,000.
And that's part of the 600K,
Yes, sir.
same date?
Yes, sir, March the 10th.
And that's your signature on there?
It is.
Going back to the first one, you said that looks like whose handwriting?
Yes, sir.
Whose?
Alex.
He didn't say whose. He just
Right
said,
there on the
yes, sir.
second check on the back. That looks like whose handwriting to you?
I mean, the top left of it looks like Alex's signature.
Okay. And then finally, this last check, that's the 375, that's part of the 600,000?
Yes, sir.
Is that your signature right there on the check?
It is.
And the same date?
Yes, sir, March 10th.
Okay.
And do you recognize that signature at all?
I mean, it looks like Alex, but I mean,
Best as you can see on this
best I
document.
can tell, yes, sir.
Okay. All right, what, those particular checks, what did you, once those were cut, yeah, the defendant's been texting you about it, what did you do? Once you recut them?
I think, as I said a little earlier, at some point in time, we were having a phone conversation, and I told him that I was on the road, that if I got back and was able to sign them, I'd let him know. And I ultimately did make it back to the office, I believe, that day.
Once we get to the
Was able to get the
conversations,
checks signed.
this will be
and either
very
called him
interesting.
and said they're ready, and he said, I'll send somebody up to get them. Or maybe I called him as I was going back to the office, but before I actually
He
signed them,
already
and said, hey, I will be
testified,
back to
he
sign
sent
them, they'll
someone
be
to
ready.
get the checks.
And he said, well, I'm gonna send somebody up to get them.
Let it go. He's
So they
said
would
that
have come
4
up.
times.
I think he had a runner come
But
up
I'm
that
only
day
half
that would
paying
have picked
attention 'cause
up
I'm so
a package
tired
that
of
had
the
those
checks.
checks. I don't remember exactly for sure, but generally it's gonna be those checks, cover letter, and a package that has, a partial disbursement sheet. Our client had signed off on allowing the fees to go ahead and be paid. Then, while we were waiting on some liens to resolve themselves, some costs to come in, and some things like that. So our client had signed off on a partial settlement statement, and I would have provided that.
The voided
I
check we
saw a
saw
great
before,
question
and
about
these checks all have the
handwriting
same date,
identity.
is that
I,
correct?
Yes, sir, they
I
do.
flagged that to get to it a break.
Do you recall anything about that? Did you
a
call him
really
up and
good
say, hey,
question.
great news, I got it taken care of? He said, wait. How did that go down?
I don't remember, I mean.
Creighton just wants
I don't
a
remember
T
how many
now.
different conversations we had that day, whether
I
it
mean,
was over.
we're here for the
you know,
T2, Creighton, just
one
not the checks.
conversation, or 2 conversations, I don't remember, but at some point he instructed me that the $600,000 check needed to be made into separate checks.
He sent somebody to pick
I
them
think,
up?
I mean, I didn't mean to cut you off, we talk a lot every day. And so we probably had multiple conversations that day, but at some point he instructed me to do that.
He's one of your best friends.
Yes, sir, very much.
We know that. Creighton. And Creighton, he keeps saying was. You need
Not
to
just
get on
my
the
best
was
friend,
board
but
too.
wars. I mean, our families were close. I mean, our kids, our wives, I mean, we're close.
You had a friendship with Maggie, too.
Yes, sir, very much.
You had a friendship with Paul, too.
Yes, sir.
You had a friendship with Buster, too.
Yes, sir. Haven't been able to have that since, not like it was, but yes, sir. Hope to one day. But, yes, sir.
I think Creighton's pausing for dramatic effect. Truly. But Creighton knows
Why
there's
didn't you
going to be more
disperse the fee checks the
dramatic
same day?
effect.
Do you recall?
The fee checks
I
were
mean, I'm
dispersed.
sorry, my bad.
Cost
The
checks?
expense checks, the cost checks.
Yes, sir. We were still waiting on some costs to come in, and we had several experts in that case, and it's not abnormal to have costs that come in after a settlement or after a
Rebecca, I agree.
verdict that you reach. Sometimes you're taking
Tinsley
depositions
will
up
tie
to
it
the last
together.
minute.
Hopefully,
Sometimes
he
you have
comes
experts that are
in
working, they're going to
soon.
send you their bill for their trial time. And so a lot of times those costs will come in. I think our client had authorized us to hold some money back in escrow for an expected cost. And so we had a lot of bills that were coming in even into late April.
You mentioned that the defendant had said something about his exposure in the boat accident lawsuit as a reason for structuring these fees.
Yes, sir.
Did he say any more about that?
Not in that conversation, when he asked me to write the checks directly to him. we had had some other conversations, and I don't remember if they were before this or after this. Honestly, I think they were after, but I don't remember for sure, where he had just said that there was, some fights going on between insurance companies.
When the defendant asked you to do this unusual step and write the fees direct to him, and you said you trusted him, correct?
Yes, sir.
What was your general perception of his law practice, of his wealth, of his financial security, knowing him as well as you did? What was your perception of that?
Big firm, big reputation. Alec had a big reputation. I mean,
Big reputation.
He made a whole lot
Big
more money than I
reputation.
did.
I'm sorry, I can't help myself at
Everything
this
I
point.
knew
It's
from the
early.
way his partners treated him, the type of cases I saw him working on with them, the type of cases I knew he worked on with me, that he was, one of the biggest dogs in that firm, one of the biggest producers they had.
He was
seemed
the
to own a lot of
rainmaker.
things, do a lot of things, spend money, didn't ever seem to have problems. And I knew I was associating him and his firm on very good cases throughout the years, and I
He's
knew
like,
other
I-
lawyers that were.
He's like, I knew how much he was making because
Seemed
I
like
knew
they
how
were
much
doing
I
very
was
well, and
making.
that he specifically was doing very well.
And he was making more than I was
Is that
making.
perception that you had of him one of the reasons why you trusted him?
No, we trusted him because they're
That there
friends,
was no
Creighton.
shenanigans going on?
I don't know that
Shenanigans,
that's
bingo.
the main reason. I trusted him because I knew him and had dealt with him personally and professionally for a long time. But I had no idea if he was having money problems. I mean, I would have never suspected that his asking me to write checks to him had anything to do with money problems on his behalf. Nothing gave that appearance.
That's fair.
So, I mean, that could have factored into the back, but mostly it's just I knew the guy and I trusted him. And he wasn't asking me to do anything that raised
Wild.
any flags with me. He told me he had cleared it with his firm and with his partners. I didn't have any reason to doubt that.
Except he was trying to hide it in the boat case, so, I mean, that's
I'm
fucking
going to
shady.
put
But he didn't know
States
that that was the
347
stated
up on the
purpose.
screen. And what are these again?
That's a cost reimbursement check in one of those cases. I can't tell you which one it is.
All right. And then if we go 2 pages back, this is the other check?
Yes, sir, in the other case, cost reimbursement.
All right. And those are the same amount?
1 penny difference. I think Alec sent me the cost total, and I just split them evenly between the two cases.
And what's the date on that check, those checks?
May 13th of 2021, which I believe would be the time, obviously, we wrote the checks, and they would have been mailed to his office shortly thereafter.
And you said that there was a reason why these came a couple months later?
Yes,
Y'all
sir.
were waiting for some information?
Waiting on costs to finalize up. Instead of writing multiple checks as costs came in, we just kind of wait sometimes till the final bill's received.
Is that your signature on these checks?
Yes, sir.
And those would have been mailed to Alec's law firm, correct?
That's the general practice, yes, sir, is we mail them to the firm. And I don't know any reason why these wouldn't have been done differently.
In May of
So we
2021.
didn't know why they would be done differently, but
Did
they
your
were.
office, after these checks were mailed, did your
But they
office
were.
receive any communication from the defendant's law firm?
My paralegal, Vicky, received an email from Alec's paralegal, Annette.
The girls got to talking and went, my boss said he cut it. My boss says he doesn't have it, but my boss told me he cut it. But my boss told me he didn't have it. And they got to talking and figured out that something was rotten in the state of Denmark. I saw questions about whether the Financial Times
And
will be
tell me about
televised.
that. What was the communication you
Creighton.
received from Annette?
Yes, sir, from Annette Griswold, Alec's paralegal.
All right, your paralegal, Vicky, received a communication from Annette Griswold, the defendant's paralegal.
Yes, sir. Vicky got an email from Annette that said, hey, we got the, something to the effect of, hey, we received the cost checks, either why no fee checks or where are the fee checks.
Okay. And did Vicky respond to that?
She did.
And what did she respond?
She responded to Annette that the reason
Y'all,
the
I
fee
was
checks
quoting
weren't included is
Macbeth.
because they had already been paid
not
to Alec.
picking on Denmark.
and he had already received the fee
It
checks.
seemed that quoting Macbeth was appropriate during
Is that
this
on about
trial.
May 19th, 2021?
I'd have to look at the email, but I believe so, yes, sir.
Did Vicky raise any issue with you at this point? Did you know anything about it at this point?
No, sir. I was in trial the following week in Hampton, actually, all week long, and I was
Hamlet.
preparing for that.
Was it
Vicky sent
Hamlet?
that
It
email
might have been
back.
Hamlet.
She didn't notify me about that actually until all this blew up, and
Now
I
I'm
turned all that
questioning
over
myself.
to SLED after we found it, after all this blew up in September.
I think it was Macbeth.
Moving
I'm
into late May
uncaffeinated, and it's early to
2021,
quote Shakespeare,
did
not
this
Taylor Swift.
matter that Annette was raising with your firm come to your attention?
It did.
And tell
And
me-
it wasn't late May, it was the first part of June.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 348, and let's take a look at that real quick before we move on.
Sure,
See if you recognize that.
I do.
So tell me what that
Thank
is.
you all.
So this is this is an email string that
Who is Taylor
begins
Swift if
on
not the
May the
Shakespeare of our time?
27th from
Exactly,
Jeannie
Chad.
Seckinger,
Exactly.
which is the bookkeeper
Exactly
or
it.
accountant in Alex Law Firm. And it's an email from Jeannie to Annette Griswold, Alex Paralegal, on May the 27th, where she telling Annette that she got the expense checks and it didn't match their records, that Alec thought he had more outstanding cost but can't say
I am
what.
so.
And was
I'm turning
asking-
Creighton down for a minute. Creighton, you're gonna shut up for a second. I am so annoyed that they are going over this testimony. Annette has testified. What Chris Wilson knew of what Annette said to his own paralegal is all hearsay, and it's cumulative, and Annette already testified. There is no need for any of this. No need for any of this.
May the 31st was Memorial Day, a Monday, and so June the 1st would have been when Vicky came back in. So Annette emailed her again on June the 2nd and asked for some information, and then Vicky emailed her back and said, since this involves documents she didn't deal with, which was bookkeeping stuff that she didn't deal with, she would forward it to me.
And so that happened on what day?
June the 2nd,
Of what year?
2021.
Your Honor, this time I'd offer States 348 in the evidence.
I think the defense
No
at this
additional
point.
objections, Your Honor.
I think the defense is not objecting because they're just looking at the judge and they're like, suck
right,
it.
and
He's going to
so-
go through all this testimony 17 times and you allowed it. So you're going to sit here and suffer.
This is,
Suffer! Like all of us. Cheers. My
going to
Irish
the
cream
bottom,
cold
this
brew
is
is
the
here.
email from Jeannie to Annette, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And then that gets sent from Annette to Vicky
Creighton?
on May 27th,
This
correct?
is so fucking
sir.
cumulative,
And
my
then she
guy.
gets back from
stop.
vacation, and then she responds on June 2nd, 2021, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what does she say?
She's going to forward that to me. And she did. She CC'd me up in the email string.
If y'all are like, isn't this hearsay? Yes, it
All right,
is.
and
But
did
it
you have
only
a
matters if
conversation with
someone
Vicky at that
objects.
time about this issue?
I did.
And what'd you tell Vicky, or what was y'all's conversation?
She said, I've gotten this email from them asking about the cost in this case.
Great.
What do you want me to do? And I said, tell them that you'll forward it to me and I'll deal with it.
Around this time, had you had any conversation from any other partners in PMPD, the defendant's law firm?
As best I recall, Mr. Waters, I was in Hampton the entire week before, and I was working out of their office. I was trying a case down there like the week of May the 24th, and I was working out of Alex Firm's office. Lee Cope approached me and said, hey, I need to talk with you about this back truck case. Has all the money been dispersed? I said, Lee, it hadn't all been dispersed. We've got some liens, some medical liens we're waiting on to deal with. We've got some costs that we're waiting on to come in, and it all hadn't been dispersed, but I don't know off the top of my head. I'll have to check on it.
The
And I
defense,
was stuck in trial through Friday of that, or through Thursday of that
the
week.
defense has to object, and the defense isn't objecting to the hearsay stuff. And every time they
Did you
do,
reach
the
out
judge
to the
sustains
defendant
it.
after
Or
Lee
almost every
had
time the
that
judge
conversation
sustains
with
it.
you?
I reached out to him after I got this email.
All right. And tell me what your conversation was with him when you reached out to him, having received this email from Vicky asking about these fees.
I called Alec, I said, Alec, I got this email from your firm. They're asking about issues with costs that you think you've got more costs that are owed to you.
That is not what he said.
I put down on the settlement statement and wrote checks for the amount of costs that you gave me. But if there are more costs outstanding, just figure out what they are, because we've been holding some money back. And I think at that point we were waiting on a medical lien to resolve. And I don't think the client will have a problem paying the cost out of what we're holding back.
I think what he said
Did
was,
you have any
Alec, what the
discussion
fuck?
about the disbursement of the fees at that point?
I did. I said,
And tell me about that.
I said, Alec, this is the case that you asked me to write the fee checks directly to you. Is everything all right? And he said, yeah, everything's fine. I just need to make sure my partners know that this is the same case, that you wrote the checks to me and that it's already on the books.
Carrie said, why isn't Creighton just concentrating on
Yes,
the
sir.
betrayal of his best friend? I don't know. He has lost the forest. He is just hugging a tree and holding on for dear life.
After you had that conversation with
And
the
away we
defendant,
go.
did you do
I
anything
don't
else,
know.
or did you think it was handled?
We have
Because you've
lost the
spoken to
plot,
your
the
best
point.
friend,
We've
Alec
jumped the
Murdaugh.
shark.
He told me it was taken care of. He told me he had talked with his partners about it. I didn't think there was any other problem. I
He
didn't do
lied to
anything
him.
else.
Creighton, he lied. Move on. We know he lied. Move on.
A couple weeks later, did you have another conversation with him about this same issue?
Yes, sir. This would have been after June the 7th, yes, sir. And it might have been more than a couple weeks, because I didn't ask him anything after Paul and Maggie. I didn't want to.
Okay. Why?
I asked him if everything was all right, and he said it was fine.
Okay.
You got an email forwarded to you from Vicky on June the 2nd. Did you call Alec that day,
I think it was, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think it was that day.
thereabouts?
Yes, sir.
Oh, Creighton, you've already done a direct exam of this witness at least once, but you've probably also had him testify at the grand jury. So this is like the third time he's testifying. What could you possibly need a minute for? You need to get to the confrontation between them, and the confrontation, he started to get into the confrontation at the law firm, but we need to hear about the September 3rd and 4th conversations, and then he has to decide if he is going to elicit evidence about the roadside incident, because the roadside incident happened on September 4th after Chris Wilson and Alec's conversation. And so I think they're going to get to, they have this huge confrontation,
June 7th, 2021?
Yes, sir.
but they've got to get there.
Monday?
Yes, sir.
Did we know it was a Monday? I think we've talked about it.
Gamecocks had played some baseball that weekend. You'd
Yes, sir.
seen the defendant?
I'd seen him and Maggie and Buster, my wife and I, and our children.
So they all went to the
Been
baseball
with him
game
and
together.
Maggie and Buster the weekend before, Saturday, yes, sir.
On Monday, June 7th, 2021, what was your day like just during the day?
Went to work. I was in the office most of the day. I think I had something scheduled that it canceled out. And ate lunch with a friend, and I live in Columbia, even though I practice in Bamberg. Kind of later in the day, I ran by the pharmacy, picked something up, and then headed to Columbia and stopped to pick something up at the store on the way home.
Went home,
Yes, sir.
normal evening?
Yes, sir.
Remember what you were doing that evening?
Just hanging out with my wife, and I don't remember how many of our kids were home, but I think just our youngest. Just watching TV.
Watching TV?
Yes, sir.
Creighton?
I was kind of late getting home, so there wasn't a whole lot of the evening left.
Creighton, it is emotional. You don't need to repeat what he says for dramatic effect. Just trust the jury and trust the witnesses. What are you doing, Creighton? Ask him what happened next. If you were, I don't know what he's doing with the defense attorneys, but this is why this prosecution team has no narrative. They're either not listening to the answers or they have no sense of pacing, but it's just so frustrating.
That evening, did the defendant call you?
Yes, sir, he did.
About what time did he call you?
I don't remember exactly. I mean, I turned my phone records over, but I think it was around 9:20, 9:15, 9:20.
Before we talk about that, I'm going to show you States 451. You recognize that?
I do, yes, sir.
What is that?
This is my phone log that I turned over to SLED.
Does that reflect calls from Alec Murdaugh on
Is
the
he
night of
refreshing
June
his
7th,
recollection with
2021?
this? Has this already been
Yes, sir.
admitted into evidence? What is this? He can't admit this into evidence. He has no
Tell me.
To and
foundation
from,
for it.
yes, sir.
How is
Tell me
this?
what you were doing when you first received a call from Alec Murdaugh that night.
This I want to
I
hear.
remember my wife and I were sitting on the back porch. We have a TV on the back porch. We were sitting back there on the couch talking, watching The Bachelor. Can't believe I was watching that.
I can. You're married. How long have you been married? That's why you're watching The
phone
Bachelor.
rang.
You like it. Don't
It was
disparage
Alec.
The
I had
Bachelor,
actually
Chris.
stepped off the porch, and the pool pump is on the side of the porch, and I was trying to mess with something with the pool pump. Sounded like it was running funky, and so the phone rang, and it was Alec, and I answered the phone.
What did he say?
Said, hey, hey, Bo is normally how he would greet you, hey, Bo. And I don't remember if he said, what are you doing or what. I pretty quickly told him, hey, I've got my hands in the middle of this pool pump messing up. Can I call you right back?
Did he sound normal to you?
Sounded normal, yes, sir.
So you said, hey, I'm busy right now, let me call you back.
I did, yes, sir.
And what did he say?
Said, that's fine, no problem.
And having that exhibit, and Your Honor, I apologize, I'd move.
Sounded normal when he was asking you to cut all those checks that he was stealing from the client too.
States 451
Didn't
into
he?
evidence at this time.
Didn't he?
Submitted.
Sounded normal when he told you that he
Have a
was
chance to look
stealing
at your
from
phone
you.
records there.
Didn't
What time
he?
was that first call?
Looks like it was at 9:11 p.m.
No foundation.
incoming from his cell phone.
I'm here for the info, but there's no foundation.
Right, so you got off,
2-minute phone call.
2-minute phone call.
Yes, sir.
So, you got off the phone, what happened next?
I finished trying to fix the pool pump, called Alec back,
All right. And what time was that?
9:20 p.m.
Tell me about that conversation. Tell the jury about that conversation.
Called Alec back. I generally say, hey, Bo, too. And, hey, Bo, calling you back. He said, hey, I'm about to get to my mom's house. Can we talk a little bit later? I told him, sure. There were a couple of things I needed to talk with him about, cases that one case that we were working on and one case that I had going on. I wanted a little advice. Ask him how his mama was doing, and I asked him how his daddy was doing because I knew his dad was getting a lot worse. We had talked about that over the weekend at the baseball game in Columbia, and I think we had talked on the phone on Sunday also. So he said, can I call you back or can we talk later? And I said, sure.
You said his daddy was getting worse. Had he called you that day, Monday at all, to give you any updates to your recollection?
I don't think we talked earlier in the day on that Monday, but we had talked
They talk all the time. It's kind of hard to parse
on
out
that
the
Saturday
one.
before and on that Sunday before. And so I knew his father was getting worse, and I think I knew that he was either going to or had already gone to the hospital.
So that second call, was that also very brief? He said, hey, I'm at my mama's.
Creighton, he told you what he
3
said.
minutes.
Just
What happened
listen.
after that? You still watching TV?
Still watching TV, yes, sir.
Did you talk to the defendant again?
I did. He, I believe, texted me sometime later that evening, and I think the text was something, are you still up or still up, something like that.
All right, stand by for me real quick.
Sure.
Great. Y'all were standing by. We're gonna answer some questions. Singing from different sheets of music. Yeah, the fraud trial and the murder trial are definitely singing from different sheets of music at this point. I wish they would come to your channel and listen to you. I think they are in the middle of a trial and they need to just do what they're doing. They don't need to hear it from me. I would tell them if they asked, but they don't need to hear it from me. They need to land the plane at some point. Why wouldn't his colleagues tell him the same thing? I don't know. I think they're all too close to the case. I think the prosecution team is just too
We'll
close
show
to
you
the
what's
case.
been marked as States
And
452
it
and
happens.
see if you recognize that document.
Or, because Creighton's one of the big dogs in his
Yes, sir.
office, people don't want to stay
This is a
anything.
snapshot of text communications between me and Alec that I snapshotted and provided.
All right. Your Honor, this
Screenshot.
time I'd move States 452 into evidence.
We're on evidence item
Submitted.
452. Can y'all tell me what are 3 things out of the 452 that lead to the murder case that are actually helpful to you?
This is a screenshot of the text that you, of your text that you provided. Is
452
that
items of
correct?
evidence.
Yes, sir.
All right, and we see down at the bottom, is that a text? Who is that text from?
That's from Alec to me at 9:52 on June the 7th. It says, call me if you up.
Okay. Did you receive that text? Were you still awake at that point?
Yes, sir, I was.
All right, and what did you do?
Picked up the phone and gave him a call.
Okay. And tell me about that conversation.
You're right, you guys Snapchat video.
No,
All of
I
you said
called, the first
Snapchat
time I
video.
called, he didn't answer, which is kind of normal with Alex sometimes. Sometimes he wouldn't answer because he was either on the phone or sometimes he was just in bad service, I think, and couldn't get a call to go through, so I'm pretty persistent. I call right back. So I called him, I didn't get an answer, and then I called him back, and that was at 9:50, according to these records, 9:52 is when I tried to call and didn't get an answer, and I called back at 9:53 and said, hey, Alec, I got your text calling you back. How's your mama? You know, and he said, you know, she's, you know, doing about like normal, I think. I mean, she'd been doing poorly for years. And I told him I needed to talk to him. We had a case we were working on that involved a piece of equipment that had malfunctioned, and the company had preserved the equipment, but they weren't going to preserve it too much longer. We needed to get it inspected, and they were kind of pushing on us about when the inspection was going to occur. And I said, hey, we need to talk about this and get this squared away so we don't miss the chance to inspect this equipment. And I need to talk to you about some motions or something I've got upcoming that I need a little help on.
Work
And he
mode.
said, hey, that's cool, but I'm about to get back home. Can we talk tomorrow? And
He was
I
in
said,
work
sure,
mode.
fine.
That was some total of what he had to say was he's about to get home to Moselle and
This
can
is
we talk
at
tomorrow.
9:53 p.m.
We put States 451 up on the screen.
So this is at 9:53 p.m. The 911 call comes in at 10:06. I'm sure there's a chart somewhere of the car on-offing, or unparking
Right here.
that ties this timeline
Is that
together.
your writing right there?
The prosecution
That's my
sure the fuck
handwriting, yes,
hasn't
sir.
tied it
And that
together
says Alex
easily.
M, and those are the defendant's calls, is that right?
The bottom one is him calling me and me telling him I'm on the pool pump. The next one is me calling him back and telling me he's about to get to his mama's. And then the next one up here is me trying to call him after that text that he didn't answer. And then the top one is me calling him back after he didn't answer and talking to him for those couple minutes.
Okay.
And then that one in the middle, that's just a irrelevant conversation with some other person?
Just a friend of mine who I told his name was probably coming out today, so I told him that he was on my phone.
We did scratch out his number.
That's right, yes, sir.
Just another friend of mine who I had to tell was probably going to be all over the interwebs. Who else Chris Wilson is calling is completely irrelevant to this trial, and I'm glad they at least redacted something. They hadn't earlier in the trial redacted out phone numbers, and the internet's going to internet. I don't think these attorneys were prepared for the interneting. So with that, we know that it took him about 15-ish minutes to drive to his mom's house and back. So
I felt like his name would probably come up today, and he should know that.
this is all irrelevant, but thanks, Chris. There's no question
Just go
pending.
about your evening after that?
Y'all are just,
Did you just go about your evening after that?
Pretty shortly after that, I went on to bed. My wife stayed up, but I went on to bed shortly after that.
How'd you find out?
I was asleep. My phone's always kind of sit beside the bed. I could hear it buzzing, but I really wasn't paying any attention. My wife comes in kind of, just hysterical. She says, you gotta wake up, you gotta wake up. And I don't remember if she was on the phone with Randy's wife or Randy himself. She's trying to tell me what's going on, and I'm looking at my phone, and I've got a text from a person I knew in Hampton that's texting me saying, hey, give me a call. I got to tell you something before you hear it somewhere else. It was a person that was in the county government down there that I knew that was just trying to get word to me before I heard it somewhere else. My wife, I don't think I respond to that person or her text immediately. My wife is telling me what's going on. I just told her, I said, I'll get some clothes. I got to go to Moselle. We started trying to call our daughter right at about 11 o'clock. Started trying to call our children, tell them what was going on. I don't even know how much my wife and I spoke about it. I mean, she knew I was leaving. I got in the car, went straight to Moselle, grabbed some clothes and went straight to Moselle.
How long does that take?
From Columbia, about an hour and 40 minutes or so. I mean, I called some different people on the way that I thought needed to know. I mean, repeatedly tried to call my daughter. She was extremely close. She is and was extremely close to Buster and Paul. And, you know, we couldn't get her to answer, called her boyfriend, just repeatedly calling her. I think I talked to Randy on the way down, but I can't say for sure I did, but I know I talked to somebody in their family on the way down, just to tell them I was on the way.
About what time did you get to Moselle?
About 1 o'clock in the morning.
And then they all descended on Moselle.
Other family and friends were arriving then too?
Already had arrived, I believe, yes, sir. I mean, when I got there, I went through the main gates. I could see, I don't know that I knew at that point that this had occurred at the kennels, but I could see that there was tons of activity there as I passed by to go to the main gate, and when I turned in the main gate,
So from the road,
I
he
was
could see
on the road
activity at
headed
the
up to the
kennels.
house. You don't go
Interesting.
very far, and you can turn right to go to the kennels. I almost was going to turn and go down to the kennels, and I think John Marvin and Randy were walking out and kind of waved off and said, "Go to the house."
Is that where you went?
Yes, sir.
Was the defendant there?
He was, yes, sir. Yeah,
You talked to him?
I did. I walked in, hugged his neck, and cried. Didn't know what to say.
Hugged his neck and cried.
Yes,
Because
sir.
what do you say?
A lot of people there coming out to support him as you would expect, correct?
Yes, sir. There were a lot of the lawyers that he practices law with, several family members, you know, some friends of his that I knew. There were a lot of people already in the house, yes, sir.
Did you stay there during the early morning hours as a friend, supporting your friend?
Yes, sir, till 5:30 or so in the morning. 4:35, I don't know. I mean, everybody was shocked and destroyed, and I mean,
course.
times it felt like it stood still. So I don't know exactly what time it was, but sometime 4 or 5 o'clock that morning, everybody decided it would be best for Alec and Buster to go get some sleep, or at least try to, and not stay there that night. And so
Oh, no. Yeah,
I
you
went
don't
back to
stay
Bamberg
there.
and slept in my office.
Did you return to Moselle the next day after getting some sleep?
I did about 9 o'clock that next morning.
Were you there as much as you could be at Moselle or wherever you were needed over the next few days in the aftermath of all of this?
Yes, sir. I was there almost entirely the next 2 days.
What conversations did
At
you
any
have the
point,
next 2 days?
did you ever have any conversation with the defendant about
Thank you,
what he
Creighton.
did that night?
Not really, no, sir.
What do you mean by not really?
I mean, I didn't ask him. I didn't want to know what he found. I didn't want him to have to describe that to me. I didn't want him to have to relive it, so I didn't ask him about it.
Didn't ask him.
No, sir.
Because you know what
It's only
happened.
natural.
Yes, sir. I mean, I was there as a friend,
Creighton, we don't need your
supporting him and his family.
commentary.
I didn't need to know the details.
Of course not.
I knew all I needed to know is that 2 people that I loved were
Murdered.
gone.
Were murdered. 2 people you loved were murdered. You don't need the
Certainly,
gory
we're going to ask him
details.
about the stupid issue with the fees in this time.
No, sir, not at all. Didn't know there was an issue with the fee. I mean, I did not know there was an issue with the fee at that time, so I didn't have anything to ask him.
Conversations with him. Let's talk about conversations with him.
Over the next few weeks, did you do what you could do to be a supportive friend?
I did. Yes, sir. I mean, I tried to call him even more often. If I was anywhere close to Hampton, I tried to stop by and check on him. tried to make him go places and do things. Not much, but I felt like he needed to get out. You know, just, I mean, I was worried he was going to hurt himself. I mean, I was worried he was going to kill himself, just like I think a lot of people were, family and lawyers, his partners.
Well.
And so I think we all talk regularly about keeping an eye on him, and about being there for him.
After a few weeks go by, the shock starts to abate just a little bit.
It still hadn't abated.
Still hasn't abated, just a little bit.
Yes, sir.
At some point, does the defendant call you about those fees?
He does. Yes, sir.
You remember roughly when that was?
Sometime around the middle of July.
Yeah, the court is
What does
full.
the defendant say to you?
He tells me that he has not been able to put the monies into the annuities like he thought he could, that he's messed it up, and that the monies needed to be paid to his firm, and that that he needs to send the money back to me to run it through my trust account to write the checks to his firm directly.
You remember how that conversation came up?
I don't remember exactly how it came up, no, sir.
But he contacted you to say, hey, I messed up those annuities, I need to send the money back to you, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did he send the money back to you?
Not all of it, no, sir.
What did he send back to you?
600,000 of the 792.
And in what form did he send that money back to you?
It came in the 600,000 came in two separate wire transfers.
Tell me
From
about
where?
those.
Did they come from Palmetto State
I
Bank?
don't remember the dates, but I think it was July 15, July 16, somewhere
I
around
need
in
to
there.
change the way I say July.
One came from Palmetto State Bank, and I think one came from Bank of America.
From the fake forge
One for
account.
$350 and one for $250,
I
correct?
think, yes, sir, I believe
We'll
that's
hear
right.
from Palmetto State Bank about that.
That was only $600,000, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you had dispersed to him directly how much?
792,000.
Did you have a
Creighton?
conversation with him about
We
the fact
know.
that it was $192,000 short?
Yes, sir.
And what was that conversation?
Told me that he had already put the 192,000 away to where he wasn't going to be able to access it. I took it that he had already put it into the annuity.
A wire is
and
just a
that it
bank
wasn't going to be available
transfer.
without some type of penalties or cost. And he said, I don't have the 192, but I'll be able to get it to you very shortly or soon. I don't remember if he said within a couple days or a couple weeks or what he said, but it was soon.
Did he?
What did he want you to do, though, once this money came back in? Did he ask you to do anything?
To rewrite the checks payable for the fees to his firm.
They're
Did
going
he ask you to
to
communicate
the
with the firm at all?
July fees and
He
then to
asked
the
me
September
when
conversations.
the money was back into
So
the
he's just
account, if
going
I
in
could send an
time.
email that I was holding those monies so that they would know those monies were in the trust account.
But you're $192,000 short, so what was his discussion then?
He told me he didn't have the $192,000. And I mean, at that point, I
And
know
that-
that I've got a trust account for which I'm responsible for. I've got money that's supposed to have been in my trust account payable to his firm for fees.
You're right fucked if it's not there.
That's my responsibility. And so I
That's-
had to put $192,000 of my own money into my trust account to hold for the fees for his firm.
That's wading
How did
into
you do that? How did you
disbarment
put
territory.
$192,000 of your own money into your trust account to cover the defendant?
I wrote a check.
And what'd your
for
wife say
myself
about it?
and
Because
put
we
it
want to
into my
know
trust account.
how pissed.
And just quickly,
all
explain to the
family
jury why
members
you
are.
have to do that. What is it about a trust account that you have to do that if you're going to send that email to
Ever
the
heard of
firm?
Tom Girardi?
Because I can't tell somebody I'm holding money in my trust account that I'm not holding in my trust account.
But he did.
I'm responsible for that trust account. Trust accounts are money that belong to someone else.
Yep.
That you're holding in a fiduciary relationship.
In
And
trust.
you're responsible to make sure that those monies are held and dispersed appropriately. And at this point, I'm hearing that I haven't dispersed or paid those monies the way they're supposed to be paid.
At one time, did he ask you to cover that money, or was that just kind of a given that he was short?
I knew I had to, and I think he
Because
asked
he
me to,
would
but
get
I knew that I
disbarred.
had to.
He had to, or he would be fucked. And he did tell the law firm that he had the money when they inquired about it, even though Alec had already taken it. So he did.
So you get the 600,000 from the two wires.
fixed it.
And you write 192,000 of your
But
own
he
money.
did tell
And then you send an
he
email to
had
the
it.
law firm, is that
he
right?
told Alex
Send
firm
an email
that.
to Alec,
To Alec?
yes, sir, that tells me he's gonna forward to his firm, which I, ultimately found out that he did forward to the bookkeeper and one of his partners.
I'm going to show you States 349 and see if you recognize that.
So he covered
Yes,
for
sir,
his
this is an
buddy.
email I sent on
up to
Monday,
a
July the
point.
19th, 2021 to Alec.
Is that the email you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
All right, this time I'd move States 349 into evidence.
So
No
if,
additional objection, Your Honor.
if that money hadn't gotten repaid, Chris would be subject to sanction and disbarment if he hadn't put in that 192,000. At this point, and he's not the only lawyer that's now taking personal funds to cover for Alex theft. His brother's doing it, and all the other PMPED lawyers
Can you read
too.
that email to the jury, please?
Sure.
Why? It's hearsay.
Alec, as discussed, I'm confirming that I am holding in trust $600,000 in the, and that's just redacted to take the gentleman's name out, the gentleman's case, and $192,000 in the, and that's redacted out to take out the wife's name, in the wife's case, which represent attorney's fees. I will continue to hold these monies in trust until I am instructed by you or your firm regarding payment.
Never got the money back. He'll get to it in his testimony, I think.
After you sent that email, did the firm contact you? Did you have to disperse the money, or did that just kind of end the matter?
Not until September the 3rd, when Lee Cope called me after they claimed that, after they say that they had discovered that Alec was stealing money.
Daniel, it could
Let's
be a
talk about
business
the-
record.
But at that point
they
in
didn't
time,
lay a
you sent
business
that
record
email,
foundation.
and nobody's making any further inquiry at that point in time, is that correct?
No, sir.
And that money's just sitting there,
They're
Sitting
just
in my trust account.
including your personal 192 that you wrote to cover Alec, correct?
Yes, yes, sir.
can't relate.
Did you ever have a conversation with Alec about when he was supposedly going to get you that money?
Yes, sir.
I love my
Tell me
friends,
about
but if they're like, could you just pony up $192,000? I would be like, that's adorable.
I know we talked about it
I
one
got
time.
you for
I think it
192.
was at the August
Maybe.
convention down in Hilton Head that most of the lawyers that do what we do attend.
In California, they all go
I
to
had
Vegas. I did that last
begged
September.
Alec to come down there and for Buster to come with him, at least
also-
one day to play golf with some of us so they'd get out and do something so Buster could do something normal. And I think it was while we were playing golf that I just said, hey, where we stand on you getting me repaid. He told me that, I knew that Maggie's
Those
estate would be
conventions
tied
are
up.
a trip.
And I figured that that was a delay. He told me that he was, moving towards selling some property and that his father had obviously just passed and that there would be some monies coming to him from his father's estate and that he was working on it and he was trying to do it as quickly as he could. He apologized for it taking longer than he said it would.
We'll talk about those conventions
told
if you
you
ever want
that
the
he had,
tea on what those are.
Tied up
It's
some money in structures or something like that, and that's why he couldn't get to it right then?
That's what he told me why he couldn't get the $192,000 because that he had already put it into, the way I understood it, he had already put it into the annuity and couldn't get it back out. I think once you put those monies away, is my understanding, is you can't just pull them right back out. It's not like a checking account or a savings account where you can deposit and withdraw
He thought
immediately.
Forge Daddy had the money.
Yes, sir.
In an annuity.
So that conversation you had with him at the trial lawyers conference
wanna
playing
buy
golf,
annuities
that
now.
was when, roughly?
First weekend in August.
By the way, Creighton's a prosecutor. He doesn't go to
Actually,
those
it'd
types
probably
of
be that-
conferences.
We normally try to play golf on that Thursday, so whatever the
there's
first
some-
Thursday in August is.
There's some like
Not long after that, did you have another conversation with him about the
lawyer
money that
ruffliness going on
you had
here.
covered for him?
I
too.
did.
There's some
And roughly when was that?
fluffery going on with
Sometime
that.
shortly after that, middle of August maybe, I called him up and said, I need to come see you and talk to you about something, and I went down and talked to him about this money.
So there is
But it wasn't some, it was about the money. I needed to be repaid. I mean, that's a lot of money to me, and I wanted to be repaid.
$192,000, that's a lot of money.
Yes, sir.
Brandy, I pledge that
Lot
I
of
will
money
get you that
anyway.
192,000 right quick.
I'll show you what's been marked as States 350, you recognize that?
I do.
So
What is that?
So,
I want to
date on
talk
that
about
first?
the difference
August
between
17th,
prosecutors and plaintiffs' attorneys,
2021.
Creighton.
Your Honor, at this point, I'd move States 350 into evidence.
Additional objection.
It's admitted.
All right, tell me about that document. What happened? What's your conversations related to that document?
At some point in time when I'm talking to Alec, I said, hey, I need to come see you in your office and talk with you about something. I don't even think I told him exactly what it was. He said, sure. So I went down and went in his office. I said, look, I hate to even talk to you about this and I hate to ask you this, but if something happens to you, you know, and I think I phrased it like if you get hit by a car or something
said,
happens
"Hey,
and you die, I
Gerard,
can't get repaid that money against your estate unless
Baby,
there's
you got my
something in
money."
writing between us. I knew enough to know, enough of the law to know that you can't enforce an agreement with a person that's deceased against their estate unless you got some documentation of it. I said, boy, I hate to even ask you to do this. And I was worried that he was going to kill himself, you know, still at that point. And I was worried about what that would, mean
For his
more
money.
so on a human personal level, but
For his
also what that
money.
would mean about me trying to get repaid. And I said, I hate to ask you to do this, but can we do this? And he said, sure, no problem. I mean, that's our agreement, and sure. And so we scratched out, he hand wrote it, 3 sentences, nothing formal or fancy.
We already heard this in the 404 hearing. The jury has not heard this. We've heard this, but the jury has not. Emily, can I have 192K button muffins? I pledge that I will get you $192,000 worth of muffins. I don't know what that looks like, but I feel like that's a lot of muffins. So he was like, look, friend, I'm worried that something might happen to you, but if it does, I'm gonna need my money back. So could you please just, So prosecutors don't go to the types of conferences plaintiffs' lawyers do. The plaintiffs' lawyers' conferences
This is on what day?
are boosh.
August the 17th, and I was in his office.
Hold on for me 1 second.
Creighton, you asked one question and then you need a chat. Anyway, the plaintiff's lawyer stuff is bouge. Companies like Forge are there because they're looking to do work with plaintiff's attorneys. There are lots of hosted drinking events. There are lots of hosted meals. There is lots of networking, and they are always at fancy fun hotels. And you know, people's law firms send them to go. It's fun.
Stand for a moment.
It's very fun. Oh, we're taking a stand break. We're going to get to some questions. So, I know that this is a murder trial. I mean, there's days I question where we're at, but watching the financial stuff is way more clear and interesting to me. Not good for the prosecution and the murders. I agree with you, Catherine. It's showing the jury what it looks like when there's a lot of evidence in a case that's easy to and linear to follow. They already have a circumstantial case, which is harder for the jury to follow. Oh, they're at sidebar. Interesting. So they already have a circumstantial case, which is harder for a jury to follow generally, but they are not tying together those dots well. It's so easy. There's all the direct evidence in this case. It's like check, check, boom, all direct evidence. But in the other case with the circumstantial evidence, it gets much harder, and they don't have a clear timeline, and they're not doing a good job at putting together a clear timeline. Was Paul going to get money from Grandpa? Does Alec get it? Nobody's introduced that evidence. That we don't know. The jury doesn't know. Alec, big dog, in charge of defense. That is why the team is not objecting. Was he lawyers, scaredy cats? Maybe. But they should be objecting. A lot of this is hearsay. And if they don't object, this is why you don't represent your friends. It's why surgeons don't do surgery on their friends and family. You're too close to the situation. And I think the prosecution and the defense are everyone's too close to this situation. Some of the jurors know some of the witnesses. Everybody's related to everybody. It's a small town, and it's just, everything's too close. Why did we not hear about all this the day of, let me read that again. Why did we not hear about all this about the day of the murder? His earlier testimony was mostly about money. Oh, his earlier testimony, they didn't ask about all this because it was a 404. I don't know what the closed captioning's
Ladies
talking
and
about.
gentlemen, we have you go to the jury room for
shit.
recess. Please do not discuss the case.
We're going to argue over evidence, I think. Where do we stand on the money? Somewhere between the sand trap and the water over there. Matt Bond, good morning. It's good to see you. And yes, I want to hear what the lawyers are going to argue. Didn't Tinsley already testify? Not in front of the jury. Not in front of the jury. Aaron K., we're in like the third trial of this trial. We've had the trial outside the presence of the jury, the murder trial, and then the financial trial inside the presence or within the presence of the jury. Is this a white-collar crime case or a murder trial? The limit does not exist. I'm a little behind due to having to pause a few times while at work. Floors du Mal. How rude of work to interrupt our riveting trial today. Emily, are you in a hotel or a lodge? I am not going to say where I'm staying.
Out of a
just because
of
the
caution
internet's going to internet.
before we got to this portion of
Thanks for
the
asking.
witness's testimony. As your Honor's aware from the in-camera
Roadside.
proceedings,
Roadside incident.
there is he has a confrontation with the defendant, and the defendant tells him some things that he the witness here has a conversation with the defendant at his mother's porch.
I want to hear about the
receiving
roadside
word
incident.
about what the law firm had found.
Sorry, I banged my hand on the
Testimony, the witnesses
table.
testified that the defendant, admits the financial misdeeds, says he had a drug issue, I think going to rehab, and some things like that. And that is, I believe, on the early afternoon of September 4th. And then not long after that, he hears that the defendant was shot on the side of the road.
My cousin
And
Eddie.
so we've had some discussions about the drug issue. So before listening to that testimony, I alerted the defense and wanted to make sure that we had set our ground rules on that. And then, of course, the side of the road issue, which we've talked about earlier.
What ground rules did you set?
Your Honor sets the ground rules, and that's.
You take a break during questioning the witness to have a conference with counsel.
Well, I am seeking to admit that evidence, not only of what the defendant said about his drug use, but also to submit that not long after that he heard
Roadside
about
incident.
the side of the road incident, and I, out of abundance of caution, raised that issue, and I believe the defense was going to object. Trying to give them the opportunity to do that
outside the presence
in
of the
an
jury,
in-camera
because
setting.
you know that this is dangerous ground.
All right.
You know that this is dangerous territory, Creighton.
Which, Your Honor, for both of those, I think
Don't elicit it.
they are admissible. As first of all, again, we're not offering any drug use, and we've had some discussion about that yesterday. We're not offering any drug use for the purposes of what's improper under 404. In this particular instance, the defendant himself identifies that as a reason for these alleged misdeeds. So not only is it not 404, it's just part of the res geste of his statement, which is part of what's been admitted.
It was admitted yesterday, so we're beyond that issue as far as the court is concerned.
Get it, Judge?
And then as far as the side of the road,
Particulars of which have not been disclosed, but the email from Mr. Murdaugh doing rehab.
let's zoom in on the judge.
Published by the defense.
yes, sir. And then secondly, along with the
Thank you.
side of the road, again, at this point in time, just going to be admitted that he heard about what had happened to the defendant.
That's better.
There are other circumstances that we talked about earlier that we would address at a later time about the side of the road, which we believe is admissible and admissible under 404. We could I don't know that we need to have an in-camera proceeding at this point in detail about that, but because all he's going to say is he heard that happen. But I just wanted to, again, and out of abundance of caution, we've gone this far. I just wanted to be, before I elicited anything along those lines, just wanted to alert the defense and give them a chance to object.
All right. Mr. Griffin?
Yeah, we do object, Your Honor.
You should.
First, he's not the proper
Dangerous
witness to
ground.
be testifying about what happened on the side of the road. He just hears it secondhand, so any information he has is just hearsay. In the in-camera hearing, he also provided his opinion that Alec must have tried to commit suicide, and that's improper. So first it's hearsay, but more importantly, Your Honor, it is a bridge too far under the narrow exception that you've offered, that they're offering this evidence of financial crimes, that it's a motive for this alleged murder that he committed. And so the fact that whether it was an assisted suicide or they want to go further and say it's part of the same scheme and that it's a sympathy ploy, which the court hasn't ruled upon, and we don't think it is meets the standard there, and it, violates Rule 403. So for all those reasons, we object to it coming into evidence.
Do you want to proffer what Attorney Wilson is going to say about it?
You've heard it.
During his prior testimony
it.
in the in-camera
Yep.
hearing, and I certainly can do that, he testified.
Recall his prior testimony.
Yes, sir. And
Which did not involve anything about a roadside shooting.
It did, though. It started to.
so, Mr. Wilson, kind of jumping ahead, you had a confrontation.
Oh, they're
with
doing
the
a proffer.
defendant
We're doing
on
the proffer
September
now.
4th, when you drove
Another
to
proffer.
Hampton County to have a meeting with him on the porch of Alameda. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, and pull the mic forward to you a
Yes.
little bit. And
Outside the presence of the jury, we're doing another
without
proffer.
getting into all that detail, after that conversation,
Okay.
he made some admissions to you at that time. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And just very quickly tell the court what he said.
He admitted or said that he had had a drug problem for 20-plus years, and that he was going to rehab. And then he said he admitted he had been stealing money.
Okay. And did he say anything about the 192 with you? Did he have a phrase he used for that?
Yes, sir.
What
A
did he say?
proffer is telling the judge out
You don't have to proffer this portion. You're
the
indicating
roadside,
you're trying
Creighton,
to
outside the presence of the
go
jury.
beyond this into something else.
Thank you,
What
Your
time did
Honor.
this, yes, sir, thank you, Your Honor. What time did this conversation take place roughly?
Mid-late morning, just before lunch.
All right. And that's on September 4th?
Saturday, September 4th, yes, sir.
After that confrontation, did you leave?
I did.
And where did you go?
I went through Hardee's in Hampton, grabbed a bite of lunch at the drive-through, and then drove back towards Columbia.
Did you hear about anything relating to the defendant within a couple hours?
I did. I got a phone call from Lee Cope. Might have been Randy, but I think it was Lee Cope that called me and said Alec had been shot in the head and was being helicoptered. I thought he said to Savannah Hospital. I know he
That's the
said to the
proffer.
hospital in a helicopter.
And then? And then?
That's as far as this witness would go.
And I've sustained the objection as to this portion of the
Yes.
testimony.
I think that's
I agree with the
appropriate.
defense's hearsay and if it's, and he's not the appropriate witness to testify on this issue.
Thank you, Your Honor. So obviously,
Creighton,
all
stop.
right. And you're a lawyer, you understand where to stop.
Yes, sir.
That's a good ruling.
We'll take a recess for about 10 minutes.
I was hoping they would continue on with their hearing so I could finish my sandwich. But that's not what's happening, is it? No. All right, let me make sure the volume is down over there so I don't get distracted when they go to something else. All right, let's answer some questions. We're on break for 10 minutes. We're just going to start at the back and then work our way somewhere else. I don't think it's appropriate with this witness particularly for them to get into the roadside incident. I think it can cause more harm than good. I also think it's more helpful to the defense, honestly, and I'm surprised the defense objected because at this point, the defense has room to say, look, he was so desperate with grief that this is what he did, but he couldn't pull the trigger himself. But then they get into the life insurance and all this extraneous detail that's just not needed. If Cousin Eddie testifies, and Cousin Eddie has been charged with shooting Alec at the roadside incident, Alec has been charged with staging that shooting as a insurance fraud suicide for hire, and Alec has also admitted to that. So if it does come in, we are just kind of far afield, but the defense has room to argue he couldn't pull the trigger himself, I think, and that this is all born out of grief and drug addiction. And I think again, I don't see how it helps the prosecution. Or if you're the prosecution, you argue, look, there was another confrontation about money. And shortly after the confrontation about money, there was violence. And the violence this time was against him. He was trying to get out of the circumstance again with violence. So the roadside incident happened in September. It's getting very far afield from the murders. And when, I don't know if it'll come in or not, but if it does, we're going to have some concerns if he gets convicted about appeal. Because once you start getting too far afield, it's going to be, it becomes more likely that the Court of Appeals gets cranky about it. So question is, I saw another question that I was going to grab. And then Stacy, this popped up. Hi, Stacy. FYI, Rob did a great job yesterday. He's great, and he's in trial today. So he was absolutely a friend for being like, sure, let's hang out the rest of the day together. Can the defense ask about this in cross like they did yesterday? They could. The prosecution can't elicit it. It doesn't mean the defense won't. Can Eddie take the fifth since he is going to trial? It depends what they ask him. If Cousin Eddie testifies, we will talk much more about the Fifth Amendment. Cousin Eddie did give an interview before he was arrested, but you generally plead the fifth to specific questions. So it wouldn't be to the whole thing. It would go question by question. But we need to get into the Palmetto State Bank stuff first because we know how much money was going to Cousin Eddie. But a lot of that money, I suspect, is tied to the supposed 20-year drug addiction. So that runs the risk of getting far afield as well. It's going to be tough. Question is, Cousin Eddie in jail at the present time? I don't think Cousin Eddie is in custody, but I don't remember off the top of my head. I am very tired. EDB, food for thought. The objection is bait. Creighton saw the financial objection and went after the topic like a bulldog, arguably helping defense. I don't know. It's maybe they are just trying to push his buttons. I don't know. Employed by Truth. This was a great question earlier. What time were the murders? Well, I'm going to be a lawyer and say what lawyers say to everything, and the chat knows what's coming. It depends. The prosecution's going to argue that the murders happened around 8:49 p.m. And if you want to see my breakdown from last week's timeline that we have, it's in the Quick Bits video over on my second channel. That's like a 30-minute video breaking down the timeline and breaking down all of the trial last week. Quick Bits is going to be a little late this week due to travel, just FYI. So Quick Bits is over there. So the prosecution is going to argue around 8:49. I think the defense is going to try to push that timeline back. And once we see the medical examiner, I imagine that their timeline for when the murders are worked backwards from the 911 call. And so I think they're going to give a range. They normally do give a range. And I think that range will probably, and this is me speculating because, oh, I don't have my, wait, what do I have for sounds? Okay, we got that. Me speculating. I need to put more sounds on this soundboard because I'm traveling with a different soundboard, not the one that's in my office. So I think they'll probably range it between 9 and 10 or like 8 and 10. So we're going to get a broader range from the coroner, and then they're going to fight over what time the murders actually happened. If the murders happened at 8:49, then how does Alec not hear that? If the murders happened while he's at his mom's house at like 9:15, then he's at his mom's house and he has an alibi. So why haven't they brought in the ME? I don't know. I wonder if I can't even say it's strategy at this point because why are they even, the way they've ordered these witnesses is odd to me. So if they're saving the ME for last, maybe that's what it is. If they are, it's possible that the ME has timing constraints or something, or a scheduling issue, or they wanted all the other evidence to come in so the ME made the timeline make sense. I don't know. So we'll see the medical examiner at some point. They have to bring in the medical examiner at some point. That's going to be hard testimony. But we'll see. Law and Lumber said, correction, I'm driving to trial now. 1.25 hours to Winchester. Beautiful drive. Figured I'd listen on the drive. Talk to text for those concerned. Everyone would have been concerned if you said you were driving. So that's absolutely fair. And good luck on driving to trial. I will tell you all, once we're going to get through super chats and questions, at some point I'm sure I'll have time to tell you about my flight. So somebody just asked who made the audio tape of them at the kennels. The tape at the kennels, and it's a video that's up on social, and it's a great question. It's in last week's Quick Bits as well. That was made by Paul, and that's been verified through all the forensics. Cousin Eddie's attorney did a great interview on Surviving the Survivor YouTube a couple days ago. Cousin Eddie is set to testify. I think Cousin Eddie how can we speculate without speculating? We can't. We're just going to have to lean in. Speculation. And this comes from the boat case. At the boat case, after Mallory Beach, before they found Mallory Beach's body, the night of the boat case, when all the passengers of the boat, including Paul, were at the hospital, there's quite a lot of documentation and court documentation and interviews that Alec was trying to shift the burden from his son driving to another young man that was driving, and was trying to tell people that maybe they didn't remember, or maybe they saw so-and-so driving. He was trying to shift the blame, though it seems from most evidence that Paul was driving. We're not going to know before that went to court, Paul was murdered. So we don't know, but he was trying to shift it. I think Alec has been trying to shift things onto Cousin Eddie. I think Cousin Eddie has seen that this is what's happening and is like, fuck this. I wonder if Cousin Eddie has realized that telling everything on streaming television is probably the best way to protect himself. So I think there is probably some concern that Cousin Eddie has about the power and influence the Murdaugh family still has. So if I am Cousin Eddie's lawyer, I would probably be talking about cooperating with the government, cooperating with the feds, telling everyone everything I knew, and trying to reduce my own sentence, and putting it all on the internet so you know. So with that, we will see what happens. But his testimony will be the thing I am most interested to see this trial, because I think they are trying to put some of this on him, and Alec does that, or at least we've seen evidence that Alec will do that. So who knows what Cousin Eddie is going to say? Could we actually have like a legit Legally Blonde moment in this trial? I don't know. Could that happen? Maybe. How much does Cousin Eddie know? He sure got a lot of money from Alec. So how much does he know? I'm guessing he knows quite a lot. And hopefully he is in protection. So we'll see when he testifies. I don't think that's going to be today. We'd heard rumblings it might be yesterday. I'm hearing rumblings it might be tomorrow. We just don't know. Demonstratives. The prosecution should hire queen of them, Katie Porter. This case would have been over a week ago. This case should have been over a week ago, and they absolutely need demonstratives. It's fucking painful. The internet's all making their own, but the jury doesn't have that. And the jury can't be like, oh, I grabbed this off of Twitter and this off of Reddit. The jury doesn't have that. The prosecution has to give it to them. And it's very frustrating that they haven't. Why gloss over the fact that he spoke with Alec Murdaugh at 9:20, 30 minutes after allegedly killing his family, and he sounded normal? I have questions. I think that'll come up more in cross-examination. But before we get to that more, there is something else I have to round back to, because our stream has a sponsor. Y'all know I love my Gerard Cosmetics lip gloss. So we're going to talk about it real quick, because you can score yourself a touchdown with the deals that are coming up for the big game. Yes, we have a sponsor for the stream. Thank you to Gerard Cosmetics. They have their annual big game sale going. It is Super Bowl 57. So everything is 57% off now through February 3rd. So if you love the glossy glosses that I wear every single stream, this one is pink frosting. It is one of my favorites. I also use their lip liners. They are the only lip liner I've ever liked, because it doesn't make my lips all dry. So the lip liners I wear regularly are Cher, Bel Air, and there's one other one whose name I'm forgetting. The glossy glosses that I wear the most are Pink Frosting, Cherry Hill, and Passion. We're going to have some others coming for you soon, but the discount applies to everything on the site, including items that never go on sale, like the Clean Canvas, which is for your eyes. It's great. And Hair AF, which is fantastic. The Hair AF is a supplement. If you follow Dustin Daly or know Dustin Daly, you will see his results with Hair AF. It's so good. So did I say February 3rd? I meant February 13th, y'all. If I said February 3rd, I'm totally wrong. Through February 13th, 57% off through February 13th. It is free shipping in the US, over $50 internationally, over $150. Cher, Immortal, and Nude Lips are available for pre-order only, because Cher regularly sells out, but you can pre-order it and get it shipped at a later time. And then back in stock, they have the Fair Color Clean Canvas, which is what I wear because I am pale AF. So if you want to support our friend Jen Gerard, who is a law nerd, it is a US-based woman-owned business. February 13th, 57% off. Go get you some. There are lips down below. and we will go from there. Is the lip gloss scented? No, it is not. It is not scented. And these are the ones that have the mirror on the back and have the light up on the, so on these sticks so that you can do all of the things. So I love them. There's a link down below. We also have our link populating with Nightbot. But if you just head over to Gerard Cosmetics using our link, you can do that. You can go without our link. Don't tell Jen I said that, but you're going to get 50%, 57% off either way through the 13th. All right, let's get back to your Q&A. Thank you, Gerard Cosmetics, for sponsoring. It's always so great. And the link is pinned. So I love the mirror aspect too. Kate, you know, if you are a lip gloss wearing human, you know how hard it is to be out and want to reapply your lip gloss, but not have a mirror in your bag. You know someone who wears lip gloss all the time created this. The lashes are also on sale. All the things are on sale. So it lights up. I know. I have been out doing things and I have gone to put on lip gloss and people have come up to me and been like, what is that? I need it. The amount of these lip glosses I have told people about in bathrooms, in dark restaurants, at a karaoke, there was a karaoke bar. I love it. I love it. I love it. So it makes it easy. So if you wear lip gloss, you will know. You will know. Pink Frosting and Passion are so good. They're my favorite. All right, let's get back to some of your questions about the trial. I was wondering what you were wearing on your lips yesterday. Yesterday, I was wearing one of the lip liners, Share, and then I was just wearing just a clear lip balm over it, and I do that regularly. Do you guys, I can answer questions, but do you want to hear about my crazy travel? I'll tell you if you want to know. There's 34,000 of you here waiting for the court to come back to break, so if you don't want to hear about crazy travel, I can always wait till lunch. Cousin Eddie is in custody per his attorney. Okay. I didn't remember if he was in or out of custody. Honestly, I mean, he might be a little better in custody at the moment where they can keep an eye on him. So the chat asked if Jen Gerard was in the chat. Jen Gerard is having surgery today. So Jen Gerard is not in the chat, though Jen is normally in the chat and has been since like the Toddy cases. How will Cousin Eddie explain that AM gave him enough money to buy drugs for the whole damn town? I don't know. Side note, Annette Griswold and Cousin Eddie. I know, we're there. I know, we're there. I know, we're there. It is. Okay, travel. So here's the thing. I often fly early. And it's because through Nashville, there's a lot of connecting flights. So yesterday, I did not have the opportunity to fly early. You saw me scooting my boot out of my house yesterday evening, just being like, to try to make my flight. So get to the airport early, ran into an online friend who I have not seen in person in forever, got to have a nice little chitty chat at the airport. Nashville International just opened up a beautiful, their beautiful new lobby. It's been under construction forever. It looks fantastic. So excited. Get there early, go to Sky Club, fly Delta, love them. Got to Sky Club, had a glass of champagne, had a minute to sit down, make some phone calls, check a whole bunch of emails, and was like, get to my gate, and we haven't seen that the flight's delayed. Oh, court's back. Pause. My flight was delayed, but we've got court. So, we've got a witness back on the stand. My flight was running late. They haven't turned the court audio on yet because I don't hear anything happening in court. So my flight is delayed, which makes me very close to my connection. What is happening? I hear nothing. That's so weird. So my connection is very... They're probably bringing the jury. My connection is very, very, very close. And so as I am sitting there as we are landing and then we are taxiing, I am like, oh God, I'm not going to hit my connection.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I land with 10 minutes to make my connection. That's not taxiing. Landed with 10 minutes to make my connection.
When we left off, we were talking about the $192,000 that you had put in your trust account to cover the defendant.
Chad is
correct?
Bay, by the way.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And he had signed his promissory note up on the screen. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Before I move on real quick, I want to show you what's been previously admitted into evidence of States 313 and see if you recognize that.
I do, yes, sir.
And what is that?
Looks like the original of the
Tell you guys the rest of the story in a minute.
$225,000 check
It was very
payable to
stressful.
Richard Alexander Murdaugh Esquire from my trust account dated March 10th, 2021 on this case.
All right, and that's your signature on there, is that right?
Yes, sir.
When we get a break, I will tell you what happened. But I was practically hyperventilating on the plane.
Catch the jury back up. He had asked you to send that email. You sent the email in July, and then you had those conversations in August that ultimately led to that promissory note, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then nothing more going on with it. Does anything happen in early September related to this?
Yes, sir.
And what day was it?
Friday, September the 3rd.
Tell me what happened.
About 3 o'clock in that afternoon, I'm with a group of guys. I get a phone call from Lee Cope. I tell Lee that I can't really
judge
talk much because I'm in the
Would
middle of a crowd.
grant these as
He
hearsay.
says Alex
The defense
stealing
is
money, that we
objecting.
found out Alex stealing money from the firm and from clients, and he's going to resign from the firm. And he wanted to know if I had the $792,000 in my trust account. I told him I did. He said, well, we're going to need to get that paid to us, and asked me not to say anything to anybody about any of it until the following Tuesday when they could issue a press release.
When you told him you had that $792,000 in your trust account, did that still include $192,000 that you had covered?
It did.
Okay. What happened next?
I don't think he told the firm that part, by the way. I don't think he told them.
I talked to
I don't
Lee
think he
very
told him.
briefly again. He told me he was in the middle of trying to deal with all that they were dealing with, and he couldn't talk. That first phone call from him was like very brief, and then I think we talked again after I got away from the crowd. But he told me that he couldn't talk long, that they were in the middle of trying to deal with all that they were dealing with, and that we would talk later. And I mean, I had to kind of go back to the crowd that I was with and try to act as much as I could like normal, so that, you know, I mean, I think they realized that I'd stepped away and take a phone call that had bothered me, and I tried to pretend like things were as normal as they could be until I could get away from that crowd.
You don't pretend
Did
as
it
well as
shock you
Alec
to
does,
hear
do you?
this?
Yes, sir.
Is that something you expected to hear about your friend, the defendant?
Not at all. I mean, I didn't expect that to be the purpose of Lee's phone call to me when I took it.
What did you expect?
What happened next? Did
Curious.
you attempt to call the defendant?
I think I texted him. I may have tried to call him after I got where I wasn't in the middle of a crowd of people. I think I may have called or texted him or both. And he texted me back something to the effect of that he couldn't talk right then, that I think he said he was meeting with probate attorneys or something to that effect, and that he couldn't talk right then and he would call later or we could talk later.
When Lee Cope called you, did he say anything about this check that's up on the screen?
He did.
What did he say?
He said that they had found a check in Alex's office from my firm that was made payable directly to him. I don't remember exactly how he described it, but he said, we found a check, we found out that Alex stealing money from the clients in the firm, and we found a check from your office, and I need to know if you've got that $792,000 in your account. We're going to need to get that paid to us, and I need you not to say anything until Tuesday when we can issue a press release.
How long do you think after you got that call or those calls from Lee that you tried to reach out to your friend, the defendant?
It probably took me an hour, maybe two, to finish what we were doing and get to where I could, where I felt like I could reach out to him without being
That'd
in
be
the
so
middle of other people.
stressful.
And what was his response again?
That'd be so
Something
stressful.
to the effect of he couldn't talk right then, that he was, I think it was something to do with the fact of meeting with probate attorneys or something like that, and that he would talk to me later.
Well, that's not what he was doing. He was getting fired from his job.
This is on September 3rd?
Friday, September the 3rd, the phone call from Lee was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Creighton,
So
you've said that 4 times.
Did
Trust
you
the jury to remember
Talk
things.
to Alec later on that day?
that night, yes, sir.
And what was your conversation then?
I don't remember if he called me or I called him and was able to get him. And I said, Alec, I need to know what's going on. You know, Lee has called me about this, and I need to talk to you, and it needs to be face to face. I need to know what's going on. And he was non-committal about meeting, said he had a number of things he had to deal with, and that he would try to meet with me the next day.
Okay. So
I
what
mean,
happened?
I was at home, my wife was there, you know, I mean, I was talking to him on the phone, but I wanted to talk to him face to face to find out what was going on.
How were you feeling?
Wouldn't you?
Shocked, betrayed,
I would. I'd be like,
Mad.
bro, what the fuck?
I mean, I don't know, numb. Just, I didn't,
What happened the next morning? Was that Saturday?
Saturday morning, September the 4th,
What year?
2021.
This is
try
just
to
an
get in touch
interesting
with your
conversation.
I did. I woke up early that morning, told my wife, I mean, I had, you know, told her that evening that there was a problem. I didn't get into a lot of detail with her, just told her there was a problem. And woke up the next morning, told her I was going to drive down to Beaufort. I thought Alec was staying at his brother's house, and I was going to drive down and talk to him.
He's like,
So
we're
I got
talking
in the
face
car
to
and took off
face.
driving towards Okatee.
Were you trying to get in touch with him and
Called
not
him a bunch.
not getting in touch with him?
No answer. No, sir.
He's like, I'm going to
So
come.
you just decided to go on down there and find him.
Yes, sir.
So you drive where?
I started driving down I-95 towards Okatee, and he called me before I was going to get off and go to John Marvin's place. But he got off. He called
Let
me
me slow
before.
down. You say Okatee. What's Okatee?
I mean, that's what I call the area where his brother John Marvin lives. It might not be technically correct, but that's what I call it.
But that's where you thought he was?
I was
Because he
under the
knows the
impression
family
that's
so
where
well.
he
He's like,
stayed,
I'm going to
yes,
come to
sir.
your
So
brother's
you were just
house,
gonna show up?
and then I'm going to go to your
I was
mama's
hoping
house.
that he would call me back on my way, but if not, I was just
Find
going to show
you.
up. Yes, sir.
He was going to find
So
him.
what happened along the way?
He called me while I was on the road down there and told me that he was sorry he hadn't been able to take my calls and that he would meet me at his mother and father's house at Alameda.
Did that meeting ultimately happen?
It did.
About what time did that happen?
Kind of late mid-morning.
I bet the jury's
I wanna say
interested
around
in
11 o'clock or
this.
so, sometime
Like
before
this
lunch.
confrontation.
And so tell me about that meeting.
I got there before he did. I think I waited in the car maybe out at the front of the driveway, and then when he pulled in, I followed him in. We got out, didn't say anything in the driveway. Went through the side door. I believe the caretaker was there. The lady that helped take care of, one of the ladies at least that helped take care of Miss Libby was there. She went kind of towards the back, and he and I went out on the front porch.
Okay. What was your conversation with him on the front porch? About what time was this again?
I don't know the exact time. Sometime between 10:30 and noon, but I want to say it was around 11 o'clock or so. It was I was there for about 20 minutes.
All right. Tell me about the conversation that you had.
We went out on the front porch. We still hadn't said anything to each other than he said, let's go out on the front porch and talk. We went out on the front porch, and I looked at him, and I said, Alec, and I'm sure I said F or H or something. I said, what the is going on?
Say it. What the
I
fuck?
need to know what's going on.
What the fuck, bro?
Because I know about this thing that Lee's called me about, and I need to know if there's something else you've done that involves me that I don't know about. That's a problem for me. What is going on?
What does he say?
He didn't say anything. He broke down crying. Said, I can't talk. I can't right this second, Chris. He walked inside and grabbed a handful of paper towels and came back out on the porch and said, I'm sorry. I've had a drug problem. I'm addicted to opioids. And I don't remember if he said 20 years or exactly how many years, but he said, I've been addicted to opioids
he added
for
info
something
into
like 20
this.
years, I think is what he said.
He added more
And,
info than he did in the proffers.
I don't remember exactly how the conversation went. There were parts where it was, I don't want to say heated like we were screaming and hollering at each other and it never came to blows, but there were parts where it was heated and parts where it was silent and parts where it was probably calmer. He said he had a drug addiction,
said
and
that
that he admitted
twice.
he had been stealing money,
From who?
he, from the law firm and from clients.
Did he say?
And from, he didn't specifically spell any certain person out or any certain organization out, but he said, I've been stealing from the firm and from clients.
What did he say about that 192 with you? What was the phrase he used?
I mean, I have to cuss to say it. He said,
Go ahead and say it.
he said, I shit you up. I'm sorry, I've shit you up. And shit a lot of people up.
Y'all, we're gonna put up a poll because I need to know if you've ever heard the phrase
I
"I
asked you-
shit you up" before. There's no question pending, Chris.
How
You're
long
a
has this
lawyer.
been going on? Couldn't
I want to
believe it.
know. So we're gonna put up a poll because
I
I
didn't know it.
have never
Never
heard that
saw
turn
it.
of phrase
Never
before this trial.
suspected it. Drugs or money.
Never saw a
What
drug
did he
problem.
say?
Just said it had been going on for a long time.
Never saw it. They've referred
say
to him
anything
as
else
a
in this
whirling
conversation?
dervish.
Just said he had been good about covering it up, especially the drugs. I mean, I didn't really ask much about I didn't know the extent of the client stuff. I knew about me and my $192,000. And in the phone call with Lee, he had said that Alec had been stealing from the firm and from clients. But I didn't know about any specific clients or any specific cases, so we didn't talk about that. I didn't ask about that.
How'd the conversation end?
I don't remember exactly how it ended. I know I left. I don't remember. Like I said, I know we didn't come to blows, and we weren't screaming and hollering at each other when I left, and I wasn't screaming and hollering at him. I was angry. I didn't know how to feel. But at some point I left.
Where'd you go after that?
I started driving back to Columbia and just went through the drive-through at Hardee's in Hampton to grab something for lunch on the
Relatable.
way out.
Since that conversation on September 4th, shortly before noon, have you had any conversation with the defendant since then?
No verbal conversations. No, sir.
No verbal
Did you ever get a
conversations.
text from him?
I've received 1 or 2 texts from him.
It's interesting. I feel like Chris needed.
I'm going to
I
show
don't
you
know.
what's been marked as States 351, see if you recognize this.
I feel like he was still trying to get in the addiction stuff to perhaps help
Yes,
his
sir.
friend.
It's a text I received from Alec on September the 16th.
But I think shit you
I
up is
responded on September
fucked
the
you over.
17th.
That's how I'm taking it. That's how I'm taking it. But of course he did. I mean, of course, I would have. He's like, I don't know. I hit the drive-through and was like, what is
up on
happening?
the screen, that's the text you received from Alec.
Offer that in evidence.
No, my apologies, Your Honor. This time I offer States 351 in evidence.
Yes, sir.
No additional objections, Your Honor.
So did it.
All right, now I'm going to put it up on the screen. Was that the text you received from the defendant?
They did this in
It
the
is,
404
yes, sir.
hearing. That's why the
Was
attorney
that the
can't
usual
remember.
number you have for him, or was that a different number?
Oh.
It's not the normal number. I don't know that I'd ever seen that number before.
Because he has a burner
Since that time, you
phone.
haven't had any conversation with him?
I think he texted me maybe one other time, and I tried to respond with something as basic as what I said there, just trying to respond, but not really communicate. I think there may have been one other text very similar to that.
You ever get that $192,000 back?
No, sir.
Did you ever really know Alec
When you
Murdaugh?
covered your friend and put that in your trust account, is it because you trusted him?
Yes, sir.
Don't do it, Creighton. He should have ended with, did you ever get that $192,000 back? He already know why he gave it to him. He should have just ended with that. Did you ever get your money back? No. Done. 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 And just leave it there. Cross-examination will be interesting in front of the jury, though. And he's got to tread lightly because Jim's friends with them, too. Easton said, I live here, no idea what shit you up is. Yeah, we put up a poll to see that.
On June 7th, 2021, you're looking again at States 452. The defendant had texted you, call me if you up, correct?
Yes, sir.
Oh, Urban Dictionary doesn't have shit you up in it. I find that very interesting.
Going back to 451, you called him
Oh, I'm gonna.
once and he didn't answer, and then got that second call, is that correct?
Yes, sir. He texted me at 9:52. I called him at 9:52. 1 minute, there was no answer.
Wait, what day are we
And then I
on?
called back at 9:53.
Did we go back to June 7th? Did I miss it?
And that was a 3-minute call, that second call?
Time traveling backwards?
I can't read on the sheet, but it was very short. I think it was 3 or 4 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes.
2 or 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes?
I think
Yes,
we
sir.
time
Very
traveled
short.
backwards.
And you talked to him, I think you've testified. Mentioned a couple things, and he said that he was where and he needed to go?
He said, I'm about to get back home. You know, service is always bad out here. Can we just talk tomorrow? Or he might have said, I'm about to get back to Moselle. I don't remember which phrase he used.
No, Chris cannot sue Alec's law firm to get the money back because Chris was the one responsible for the money. Chris could sue Alec to get the money back. I don't think he will, but he could. Will these emails later,
Wilson, please answer any questions the defense has.
emails and letters be available for the public to see? Yes, later. And courttv.com's been doing a really good job of putting those up. So yes. I really want to sing, I'm never going to shit you up. I'm never going to let you down. I'm never going to run around and hurt you. Thank you for that. I'm never going to be able to listen to anyone getting rickrolled again without thinking, I'm never going to shit you up. In the UK, it means to scare someone. I think Alec meant fuck you, like I fucked you over, because he did. He fucked people over. But also, I don't know, the opioid addiction feels like a red
Good
herring
morning,
to me.
Mr. Wilson.
There might have been drug involvement. I'm just not convinced.
One thing you said in answering Mr. Waters' questions on
Cross-examination.
when you got to Moselle late night on the 7th or early morning on the 8th, he asked you something about, did you talk to Alec about the fee issue? And your response was, I did not know there was an issue with the fee. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you did not know that there was any issue with the fee on June 7th, 2021, correct?
No, sir.
The only conversation you
question.
had with anyone about the fee before June 7th, 2021, from the law firm was with Lee Cope, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he just asked you something about, do you still have money from the Ferris case in your trust account?
He asked me if all the money had been dispersed from those cases.
So
And
it's
you
not technically a lie.
Told
Has
him
all the money
it had
been
not.
dispersed?
You
No.
told him truthfully it had not, correct?
Yes, sir.
Not
We
all of
rolled
it's
the
been
money back
dispersed.
from medical liens, cost, a number of different things.
Very narrowly
And
parsed
you never
answer.
had any follow-up questions by Mr. Cope
Narrow.
before June 7th, right?
Narrowly
Yes, sir.
parsed.
You did have a conversation with Alec, and he gave you some explanation. I forgot. What was the explanation he gave you?
After my paralegal, Vicki, forwarded me that email that she had received from their firm saying that there was an issue with the cost, I called Alec and said, hey, look, got this email that says there's a problem with cost, that you think you're owed more cost, no mention of fees, and if you're owed more cost, just let me know what they are and we'll get it worked out. We were holding money to deal with some things, and I didn't think the client would have any problem making sure all our costs got paid before the final amount of money was dispersed to the client. I said, hey, if there's a problem with cost, let me know. And he said, no, it's good. I said, hey, this is the case I dispersed directly to you on the fees. Is everything all right? He said, yeah, it's fine. The firm knows about it. I just got to make sure they know it's on the books already.
So he wasn't frantic, panic. There was no panic in his voice about conversation about the fee you had?
Nothing that I heard or saw, no,
Right.
sir.
So as far as you knew, as of June 7th, there's no issue with the fee, right?
I didn't know about any issue with fees prior to June the 7th, or even after that.
And no one was demanding from you
Is this going to no
the
pressure?
Ferris fee money, the PMPED portion of the Ferris fee money
No, sir.
before June 7th. right?
No, sir. I had not received any direct contact or request for payment of fees. My paralegal had already advised his paralegal that the fees had already been paid.
Okay.
They were just,
Now, you said a number of times in your testimony that in
I
June
think he
and
narrowly
July,
parsed the
you
answer
were
about the money
worried
being
that Alec may
distributed.
kill
I
himself.
do.
We were worried that, I mean, he was distraught, he's destroyed and upset all the time and not eating, not sleeping, sometimes not seeming like he was just focused in and even there. And not just me, I mean, his law partners, his family. I talked to his brothers, I talked to his partners several times throughout the month of June and July, just about him and what we were worried about may happen or what he may do.
They were worried that
And
he
the
was
reason he was
desperate.
distraught was over the death of Maggie and Paul, right?
Yeah, yes.
That's what he thought.
And at
That
no
calls for
point in time,
speculation,
when you're thinking,
because he's trying to say
I'm
he's not
afraid he
distraught
might
about
hurt
the money.
himself, you weren't thinking he had any involvement in June, July, during this period of time with the murders of Maggie and Paul.
No, sir.
And that he
Do you
was,
think he does now?
your thoughts were with him because he was a grieving husband and father.
Yeah, so my thoughts were with him, his whole family, and especially him and Buster.
And you reached out to him as much as you could.
Yes, sir.
Alec has not been convicted of the financial crimes.
Now,
This is
there
the
did
first thing to go to
come a time
trial.
when you were a little worried about
He's pled to, or
your
he's
$192,000, and you asked him to sign this handwritten
he's
promissory
stated he's
note.
done some of
Yes,
them.
sir.
You testified about that. And you had a conversation about how he's going to get you paid, right?
Yes, sir.
And in that conversation,
Well, that conversation about how he was going to get me paid, I think, was prior to that. I don't think we talked about how I was going to get paid when he signed the $192,000. I just simply knew enough to know, or felt like I knew enough of probate law and law that if something happened to him, whether he did it to himself or something else happened to him, and I couldn't make a claim against his estate without that piece of paper. So I don't think we talked about payment or how he might get me paid that day. He had mentioned previously that he was trying to deal with Maggie's estate, he was trying to deal with his father's estate, and he had some property he thought was going to sell.
but he was telling you that he did not have the money at the time
Yes, sir.
when you had, and that conversation was before the day of the promissory note, which I think is mid-August or something.
August 17th, I think it was.
And that he mentioned that Maggie's estate was tied up. His dad had died. You remember when his dad died?
Very vividly, yes, sir, very much.
And it was
Thursday, June the 10th.
June the 10th. It's like 3 days after
I
Maggie and
think
Paul were
there's a
murdered, right?
good
Yes, sir.
And that
argument for the
wasn't
defense
unexpected,
that
was
they
it? His dad
didn't
had been
need,
seriously ill.
No, sir, I went by to see Mr.
they
Randolph
didn't need
one of
the
those
murders
days
of
after June the 7th.
Maggie and Paul for
before June the
sympathy
10th. My
because
wife
his
and I
father was passing.
had gone down to see Buster and Alec, or she had come down while I was already there, and we rode over to Alameda to see, mostly to see Randolph, but to see Libby too.
And I guess he died within a day or so of you visiting with him.
So I think it was the
Jim,
next
you
day.
know that, you were there too.
But Alec thought he was going to get some money from his dad's estate that maybe didn't go through probate.
So if
that
he's gonna
would
get money from his
enable him
dad-
to quickly
Why the murders?
pay you back.
That's what he said, yes, sir. I
So,
don't think he said anything about it going directly through. He just said, I've got some money that'll be coming to me from my father's estate also.
And,
I'll pay it back, I'll pay it back, I'll pay it back.
you know, the difference between life insurance, beneficiaries of life insurance policies, the benefits do not go through the estate, do not get tied up in the estate.
Just enough to be dangerous probably, but yes, sir.
Well,
Facts.
the point is,
Most
he
lawyers.
never said to you, oh, I have this $1 million policy on Maggie's life, I have a $5 million policy on Maggie's life, or any life insurance that he was expecting to come into as a result of Maggie's death, right?
No, sir, not at all.
And after Maggie died and Paul died, he wasn't out spending lavishly with newfound money, was he?
No, sir, not that I saw.
In fact,
He was in debt to his eyes.
he didn't even go to Moselle to stay a single night after Maggie and Paul were murdered. You know that?
I don't know that myself directly, but every time I spoke to him, he was either staying with his brothers or staying with his in-laws. I don't think he ever went back to Moselle.
How long did he stay with his in-laws?
Now, you've known Alec for
1985, 86.
His dad
How
didn't
long that
pass
is.
away
That's
suddenly.
37 years, I guess.
The family was told June
Your
7th
math's
that
better
the
than mine.
father
38,
was
something like that.
and he said to
passing.
you that he had an opioid addiction for over 20 years?
imminently.
I don't remember exactly the number of years, but I mean, I believe it was, he said, I've been addicted to opioids for about 20 years or more than 20 years.
Well, let's just say the last 5 years. So, over the last 5 years, you've known him.
Oh, they're just leaning in. All right.
If he was addicted to opioids, did you notice any change in his behavior?
Not a thing, not at all.
And
Which is interesting.
you were around him and in a business capacity,
Yes, sir.
professional. You were sending him cases.
Yes, sir.
He was acting like
If you thought he was
the
addicted.
normal Alec that you've
to
known
anything.
since college,
Since law school.
since law school,
Yes, sir.
and nothing about his demeanor set red flags off to you as to, man, he must be on something today.
No, sir. I mean, I didn't see pill
can't
bottles when
even-
we would travel together for depositions or things like that. He didn't seem to be out of it. He seemed to be capable of handling the work that we were doing.
I don't know if this helps
You know,
the
when we would
defense.
socialize together, didn't see
Do you think
anything
this
that
helps the
indicated
defense?
that he was addicted or had a drug problem or was using drugs.
And if he was addicted to drugs for the last 5 or 10 years, and he was, from your observation, was a loving husband and father,
Yes, sir.
and you didn't observe him engaging any erratic behavior around his wife and kids?
No, sir.
Do you know anything about from your medical,
But I also think
not
this
your-
this
from your legal career
witness
handling personal injury cases? Do you
can't
know,
really say there's red flags because
you
he was
learn information
he
about
was working with him on client cases.
building up tolerances to painkillers, patients and clients of yours who have
Objection!
Built up
Lacks
tolerance.
foundation.
Not
I mean,
really
he's trying to
enough
get to foundation. But
Talk about it much, or testify for sure.
Sure.
you bring in experts for that, Jim. He's not an expert.
So I'm going to go back, cover some ground you've already talked about. But
Sure.
Jim had to know that's
Law
what was
school,
coming.
you and Alec were roommates at one point in time.
We
correct?
were, yes,
And-
sir.
And then he actually married Maggie while he was in law school, right?
He did.
And you married Dana after you graduated?
Why are
or-
you talking about his
or
wife?
while you
Who
were in law
cares
school
when
as
he got
well?
married?
Shortly after graduation,
Damn it,
And-
Jim,
and
we
Maggie
don't
and
care
Dana
when he got
sorority
married.
sisters at University of South Carolina?
they were.
You went to South Carolina Law School, but you were
Wofford
That-
College in Spartanburg.
Harvard of
undergrad.
the upstate, right?
Yes, sir.
And
Jim?
you became really good friends with Alec during law school.
Oh, this
Alec and
is-
I
we're gonna
got to
get to
be,
character.
we were friends and hung out a lot, studied together, did some things like that first year, but we got to be much closer friends throughout that end of the first year of law school. We lived together second year, and he married Maggie into our third year of law school.
And then you married Dana, and y'all would do a lot of things together as couples, wouldn't you not?
Yes, sir.
And one of the things y'all like to do is go to South Carolina football games.
Yes, sir.
And, Alec played for the University of South Carolina, you knew that.
Yes, sir.
And
I
had
don't
a
care
knee
if he
injury
played
when was
football for the
playing.
University of South Carolina.
I did know that,
Jim.
yes, sir.
And then as you grow as married couples.
This is
you
all
had
going to
children, He
character.
has children. Your oldest daughter was 1 year younger than Buster.
Yes,
Nobody's
sir.
objecting.
And then you have a son who's
2 years
a
younger
few
than
years
Paul.
younger than Paul, right?
Yes, sir.
What are their names?
And
Where do
your
they go
daughter
to
and
school?
Paul
What are their
were
social
really
media
good
handles?
friends.
Stop
Yes,
it.
sir.
And friends with Buster as well.
Yes, sir.
And
Our kids grew up together.
exactly.
Even our youngest, who's younger than their two, they all grew up together.
This is all
And
going to character, which is the
and
defense's
you
job, but
and
good gosh.
Dana and your kids and Maggie and Alec and Paul and Buster would
Asked and answered.
vacation together when they were younger before the kids started wanting to do things on
Yes.
their own, right?
Yes, sir. We would vacation together and go, on trips away while the kids were younger, and would follow you around. And as they got older, kind of doing their own things, those vacations kind of went by the wayside. But we would spend a lot of time down at Edisto Beach. We have a house down at Edisto, and they had a house at Edisto, and so a lot of our time together would be spent down there or in Columbia at Carolina football games or things like that.
Everybody's
And
got
my
their
wife
beach houses
and
next to each
Maggie
other.
were sorority sisters and became much closer friends through Alec and my friendship.
And I'll get on to that a little more. But, and you
I
did
think
a
South
lot of work
Carolina
with
needs a
Alex.
Real Housewives franchise.
You weren't in the same law firm
In
with
addition
him,
to
but
Southern
you worked
Charm.
on same cases or related cases a lot, correct?
Yes, sir. More so in the beginning, but throughout the entire time I've known him, yes, sir.
And so just sort of some examples. So if two people were in an automobile accident, one's a driver and one's a passenger, the same lawyer shouldn't represent both parties to the accident, right?
In most cases, yes, sir.
And so frequently, you would send him the passenger or the driver or vice versa.
Sometimes it would be that, and sometimes it would just be straight, I represent somebody who's been injured in some way, and I need you to help me with that one person. But sometimes what you're talking about there, about referring one of the two people out, it's called conflict of interest or conflicting them out.
Right.
And Alec would conflict me cases sometimes, and I would conflict him cases sometimes.
Hey, Jim, let's talk about
And,
conflict of interest. Didn't you
and
represent Paul? Can we chat
You had
about
a
that?
lot of respect for his ability
Jim, I got
as a
questions.
lawyer, right?
I wouldn't have
Jim.
associated him or sent people to him if I didn't.
Jim,
And you wouldn't associate him on the Ferris case if you didn't think he could
can we
do
go
a
back
good
to
job.
conflict,
Not at all.
please?
And he did a really good job in the Ferris case, right?
Yes, sir. I mean, our result was our client was very satisfied with the result.
Did your client get the money?
And Alec participated fully in the
His
entire
client did
case.
get the money
And I
'cause Chris
think
wasn't
Ms.
paid the money,
Waters
not
asked me,
Alec.
Gave the closing
Alec
argument
was
to the
stealing the
judge.
fees in that case, not
He
the money
did.
from
I
the
mean, we had
clients,
to
just to
spend
be
a lot of
clear.
time getting ready for trial, even though it wasn't in front of a jury, which sometimes doesn't come with quite as many things to have to do. Even in front of a judge, it takes a lot of work to put a case together. And so we spent a lot of time getting ready for that trial and even working the weekend before it started in Columbia out of a central location there.
And had you tried cases with Alec in the past?
I have.
Tried cases with Alec in front of the juries like this right here?
Didn't
sir.
we cover this in literally
And,
direct examination?
And I don't have to tell you, but, doing what we're doing
Jesus.
here, it can be very stressful, can it not?
It's very stressful.
I'm
yes, sir.
stressed and I'm not there, Jim.
Long nights, and get up early in the morning.
A lot
No
of hours
shit.
juggling a lot of things.
It's exhausting.
And did you ever, were you around him during the
Wearing on
stress
you,
of
Jim.
trial or cases where he just totally lost his faculties, just went off on the handle because he was on opioids? Did you ever see anything like that?
No, sir.
So did he really have an opioid
He was able
addiction
to
then? Is that,
function
are we,
In
what?
high-stress situations, correct?
Yes, sir. I mean, sometimes getting Alec to focus on the case and on what you were trying to get accomplished was difficult, but that was from,
Yeah, the
that was
chat
from
thinks
all the way
Alec,
back in law school.
Alec has
That
more
was
of a
from
problem
day
with
one.
ADHD
But
than
when
with
he
opioid
focused, he was
addiction.
extremely able to get it done.
When he was hyper-focused.
And one
I get
witness
you.
described Alex normal as being fidgety.
Just sometimes not as focused as you'd like for him to be.
With
He was taking
Stop
phone calls
attacking me.
and talking to this and looking at that and taking another phone call and, sometimes you just say, look, man, we got to sit down and focus on
No,
this
that's
and get
boring.
this taken care of.
Dopamine.
Now,
We need dopamine.
that brings me to another point. Would he always take a phone call if Maggie called him?
Always,
Would he always take a phone call if Paul called him?
always,
Would he always take a phone call if Buster called him?
always.
No matter what was going on?
Not when I was around him, if we were in court, he wouldn't take a phone call, but in depositions, he would sometimes get up and walk out and take calls. And if you were talking to him, trying to get a full conversation out with him in one breath was impossible because he was going to take a phone call.
It's our neurospicy chat is all like, stop
And
attacking
you
us.
traveled around with him for business?
We're
Yes, sir.
ADHD, Jim.
Did he, was he frequently talking to his wife and sons?
Yes, sir. Seemed
If
to
he
be.
talks to them so much
You talk to him
and they don't
multiple
answer the
times a
phone,
day, right?
why doesn't
Yes,
he
sir.
drive past the kennels
you were
when they're
with them,
not
did you
answering
see
the
him
phone,
talking
Jim?
To Maggie, Paul, and Buster multiple times?
I could tell who he was talking to on the phone. we didn't have to travel as much together later in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, just because we were working less cases. Sometimes we wouldn't have to go as many places for depositions and things. But yes, if we were traveling, I could tell he was talking to his family on the phone.
Right.
If
Was
he
it hard
will
to get
walk
out
out
and
of
go
work
on
to answer
guy
the phone to
trips?
his wife,
Did he
why
prefer
wouldn't he
to spend
drive
time
by
with
the
his family
kennels
over-
to check on her?
Gotcha.
Why?
He seemed to,
Why,
yes, sir.
why?
I mean, most any trip that I think I've ever been on with Alec generally was family.
Right.
He's not the kind of guy that would take off and go spend a golfing weekend with us, or I think they like to spend their time hunting and fishing.
But he
and doing
is the
things.
kind of guy that would charge his clients to fly
and
y'all
you,
to a fucking football
Going
game.
back to this Ferris case that was tried in Columbia,
For
you
that.
remember Maggie coming up and staying with him during the trial?
I don't. I mean, I think
Y'all,
she
if
may
I
have
ever
come
asked
up
my
like that
husband
Sunday
to travel with
before
me
we
for a
started the trial. I was staying at home in Columbia, and he was staying in a hotel. So I think that's why I stayed in the hotel, because Maggie was coming. And we were in that point, I think we were just renting a house because we were between places and didn't have a lot of space. But I wouldn't want to testify to that under oath. But I think so.
Sure.
He's like, I'm not sure. Jim's not even listening. He's like, sure.
You would go to lawyer conventions with Alec? I mean, you would go to the same conventions. And
Sure.
And you mentioned the trial lawyers, one at Hilton Head, first weekend of every August.
Yes, sir.
And
The California one is
For
the
the-
last weekend in August. But it's not in California, it's in Vegas.
events of June 7th, 2021, would he always go with Maggie and Paul and Buster?
Most all the lawyers that go to that convention bring their families along. It's a big time that everybody gets to know each other, know each other's family, and Maggie and Paul and Buster would always be there.
And it's tax deductible because it's a work trip.
And during football season, South Carolina, did he and Maggie have season tickets?
Jim.
Yes, sir.
He go to the games with his family?
Yes, sir.
Did he
And you
use his
tailgate
clients'
with-
money to
Yes,
buy
sir.
the
They would
season
generally have
tickets,
a family
Jim?
tailgate
Because I
that
don't
Miss
think this
Libby
is
would put
helping you
together.
either, buddy.
And when she got sick, I don't remember who kind of took it over, but they always had a family tailgate, and if we weren't tailgating with them, we would always make it a point to stop by and at least speak.
And he had,
Sounds
they
lovely.
had season basketball tickets,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Who paid
He
for the
and Maggie,
basketball tickets,
would
Jim?
Go to just about every home basketball game.
When
Yes,
was
sir.
he working? This lawyer had more
University
free
of
time
South
than
Carolina
anyone I
men's
fucking
basketball
know.
team.
When are you doing your
Got some
work?
pretty bad basketball teams over the years.
You got season tickets to every
We're actually
fucking
pretty
sport
good, I think, in
available.
those years, but
Okay.
I think
Do
that
they have a
was
rugby team?
Final
Do you have
Four.
tickets to that too?
Actually, I think Alec bought the tickets for the year after the Final Four when they tanked, so, yeah, you might not have seen the best basketball.
And,
I don't care how good the
And then
Gamecocks
when the
are at
baseball games
basketball.
together.
Chris,
Yes, sir.
Jim,
And-
go
I don't
out
know
for
how
a
much
drink and have
baseball
this
we-
conversation
we
later.
didn't do a lot of
What are we
baseball
doing?
ourselves, But I think they did some.
If y'all need to have a chit chat to catch
and
up, could you not do it on
we'll
our
get to this, but the
time?
weekend before
Our time.
June 7th, it would be June 6th and June 5th, you actually went to the super regionals with Maggie and Alec and Buster and
What the fuck's a
His
super
girlfriend,
regional?
Brooklyn,
And why
you and
is
your
it
wife,
involved in
right?
any of this?
Yes, sir. It was only on that Saturday that we were with them.
Why is
which
the
would be
prosecution
June
not
the
objecting?
5th. They had come up for the weekend Carolina baseball tournament, and my wife and
baseball.
two
They
of our
also were at
children
baseball.
met up with
Baseball
them on
season has
Saturday
9,000 fucking
and went
games.
and hung
When
out
did
at
he
some
work?
mutual friend's place for a while before we all went to the ball game, kind of separated.
Baseball
and went to
season
different
ages
seating
me like
areas at the
10
ball game.
years. I can't with baseball. And the games are fucking long too. I bet you Alec was watching another thing on his phone while at a baseball game because he was too
Yes, sir.
bored to
Appeared that
sit
way
there
to
and
me.
watch baseball because it's so fucking
when I say
slow.
his family, I'm talking about Maggie and Paul and Buster.
Because
His whole family,
ADHD.
yes, sir.
And you mentioned
What is with the old bro
that you
boys
became
club
good
chit chat
friends
here?
with
It's so fucking
Maggie's
weird.
family, Mr. and Ms. Branstetter,
Yes, sir.
and her sister Marion, and
Not so much with Marion and her husband Bart. I mean, I knew them and I was around them.
Is that his
but
sister-in-law?
Not so much friendly or close to them as with
Jim,
Maggie's
get a
mom and
chart.
daddy.
Just draw out the whole
and,
family
and what
tree.
was Alec's relationship with Maggie's dad?
Seemed to have a very good relationship with them. Spent a lot of time together. They would come to Moselle or or Maggie and Alec and their children would go visit them in Somerville, or Papa T would come up sometimes and.
Why?
try to
I
hunt or
don't
do
care
things
about
like
his
that.
vacationing
You knew him as
with
Papa
his
T as well?
in-laws.
And what'd you know Miss Brandstetter as?
Miss Ken. I think they called her grandma, but I called her Miss Ken.
I forgot my goat.
And they vacationed at Edisto, Mr. and Miss Brandstetter with Alec and Maggie and Buster and Paul, right?
They would be at Edisto some, yes, sir.
And
I'm sure they are
who told you a little bit about
humanizing him
Alec's
to the jury,
relationship with Paul and Buster's friends?
but it's just so.
Alec and Maggie both seemed to welcome, I mean, they were great to my children and seemed to welcome my children into their house and into their lives, and did the same for Paul and Buster's other friends.
And also, with all the tickets he's buying, they already know he's stealing from clients.
at
It's not a
Edisto
good look. It's
Was
just not a good look.
Alec and Maggie's home, was that opened up to a lot of Paul and Buster's friends? They have a lot of people staying over, coming over and visiting?
You know,
No, my friends didn't have beach
it
homes
seemed to be
growing
that way. I
up.
mean,
feel
I
like I've
wasn't
missed
over there
out.
all the time when there were children or
No, I
kids
guess we
around,
all
but sometimes,
technically
yes, sir. And
looked
my
at the
kids would say, especially my daughter would say, I'm going over to hang out with Paul and or Buster at.
Different.
at their
West Coast
place.
beaches are
Right.
different than East Coast beaches. It's not the same.
And do you remember, sort of move forward, Memorial Day weekend of 2021?
I do.
Did you and your family go to Edisto that weekend?
We did.
And was Alec down there with Maggie and Paul and Buster and some of Paul's friends?
Oh, are they going to show the
They were.
birthday video again of
You
them
remember,
singing Happy Birthday?
Getting together over
Great.
at Alec's,
Is this
Maggie's
you in
home
the video?
over that weekend.
Yeah, we got together Saturday evening, I believe it was. We got together to cook out over at their house Saturday evening with them and a bunch of other people.
And Maggie and Alex getting along as far as you knew?
Yes, sir.
Was it a fun time had by everyone, best you
Yes.
could tell?
Yes, sir.
Calls
I
for
think it was,
speculation. He
right
cannot
around about
testify
Alex's
that everyone
birthday
had
we were
fun.
doing- We not only were cooking out like a big shrimp bog, but also having some cake and kind of a little birthday celebration.
Like on this
I wanna
video?
Play that right quick, Your Honor. I think it's Defendant's Exhibit 61 or 59.
Yep. Sure.
61 is
Sure.
in evidence, Your Honor. Play it very briefly.
Sure. Happy birthday.
Tell me if this is what you're referring to.
You know it is. I'm glad you had such a nice cookout. But it's going to, everything is awesome, and he could have never done this.
Audio again.
The only thing I see, though, is
Just
they're
run it
going
through.
through
We don't
all
have
of
to
these
audio.
happy times and how
Who's
great
that?
everything is
Paul.
that he's stealing and lying to everyone around him and
Alec?
acting like it's normal
sir.
this whole time. I might need more coffee for this shit
And
today.
that's you.
Yes, sir.
Is that a
Good morning,
typical
Deputy
family
Specs. We
gathering?
love you.
Is this something like, really didn't happen very often?
No, that was, I mean, the times that I was around them and their family, things were much like that.
So that was the weekend of
And he risked
Memorial
it all
Day weekend, and then
by stealing from
the
you.
very next weekend was
and stealing
the
from his
Super Regional
brother?
Baseball games in Columbia, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's when you met up with Maggie and Alec on Saturday at a tailgate with, y'all had a mutual friend, I think maybe whose son played, or?
Son played for Carolina, yes, sir.
Right.
I think it was one of Maggie and Dana's sorority sisters, and a guy.
Do we know
that
which
Alec knew
sorority?
from
Have we
college,
gotten
but I
that
don't know if they
information in
were-
yet? Because they keep
I
talking
don't
about
know
them
how
being
they knew
sorority
each other,
sisters,
and
but do
their
we know?
son played
Are we
first base
assuming?
for
Are they all
Carolina.
just Delta Gammas?
And
Is
the,
that what,
And it
are we
was
just
Maggie,
assuming
Alec,
this?
Buster, and his girlfriend Brooke.
And you stayed, maybe you didn't see Alec and Maggie on Sunday, but I think y'all text, communicated.
I don't know
you
if this
just about
works
Boy,
after the
yeah,
jury
Paul
knows
and
he's
my
stealing
wife
from his
talked to
clients.
Maggie.
Because it all just seems like superficial bullshit
Saturday after
after
we
you know all
tailgated
of
before the
that.
game, we all split and went our separate ways
It's not
to go sit in different
humanizing at
areas.
this point.
And I don't
It's
think we saw them after that on
gross.
Saturday. We were supposed to get together on
To me.
Sunday, or try to get together on Sunday, but didn't do so and ended up going to the game separately.
And,
But we talked or texted, and I think Dana talked or texted with Maggie.
sure.
And I believe you testified earlier that during this weekend,
Google says,
you had learned,
Google
got
says
an
Kappa
update on
Delta.
Alec's dad, and he wasn't doing so well.
Thanks, Chet.
Yes, sir.
Chet
I know
is
on
Bay.
Sunday, I talked to Alec when they were going home, or they were headed home, and we were talking about just how the Gamecocks had, blown the chance to move forward, and we talked about his dad, and that's when he told me things were getting much worse.
How many times have they said Gamecock
But I
today?
kind of already knew that from the days and,
It's on my bingo card now,
leading
but
up to that. I already kind of knew that. We had talked about it before, but I remember that Sunday, him telling me things were really getting much worse.
And you knew that with the common knowledge in the tight-knit legal community of Hampton and Colleton?
so you don't
area?
steal from
I
clients?
mean, I can only speak for myself, but I knew that.
that the question?
And people seem to know that, yes, sir.
And Mr. Randolph was he was beloved by a lot of people, was he not?
Yes, sir.
Everyone loved his daddy.
Not
Great.
just his immediate family, but the broader legal community.
And most people I knew that knew Randolph seemed to respect and love him.
And Alec risked
Really,
that all
everybody I knew.
Right.
by stealing from his clients.
And we know he died on June the 10th, right?
Thursday, June the 10th, yes, sir.
There's been, how's it going?
Are you looking for your point, Jim? Great. Try to find it, please.
You mentioned
Thanks, buddy.
something, I just want to go back to the Ferris case, and
He ruined his family legacy. He stole
and
from his
you
brother.
and
He
Alec
stole
and
from his law
Mr.
partners.
Ridgway, who were representing the
Great.
plaintiffs, Ms. Ferris.
He had season
on the
tickets to
estate,
every fucking thing.
That you
Okay.
thought Mack Truck didn't want to produce some discovery, and that leveraged y'all in the ability to basically just have a damages hearing
Yes.
with a judge, is that right?
We have
Yes,
a tired.
had
We have a
some
tired Emily today.
Discovery we had asked for, they sought not to produce it. We had some motions to compel that were argued. I think we were successful in those. I mean, I can't say what they were thinking, but it felt like that we had an opportunity to structure a good chance for our client to get a good result because they didn't want us moving
Objection.
forward with some discovery.
We heard this
And so
already.
in the Ferris
Twice.
case, you succeeded in getting an order to produce the information you sought, yet y'all worked out a different way to resolve the case, is that right?
Just kind of, not to get too deep into it, but just give you some context. This is like, there was only one prior reported case.
think his lawyers love to
of something
talk.
like this happening in the world
Hi,
that we could find.
it's me,
like
I'm
in
lawyers.
Australia or something.
Right.
And now
this
you
was
got
one of
all
the
of
only
them up
times that it had
having
happened
their
while the
moment.
vehicle was actually in motion on a highway. I think it might have been the first time that it actually happened.
We're just here forever.
So there was very little,
The jury
there
probably wants
there
to
was,
object.
there was very little chance, we felt like, that we were going to be able to make a punitive damage case out of it because there had not been a lot of prior instances for Mac to be on notice on.
'Cause it was
So
random,
for us to
okay.
waive that didn't feel like we were giving up much. And I think they did not want us to discover some things because there might be other cases that were coming from that defect. This was very early on in the discovery of that defect and things starting to happen with it.
Which makes sense, but nobody cares about
Then
why you chose
moving
not
back
to
on
get
track,
punitive
I'm sorry
damages.
for
Yeah,
diverting,
thanks,
but-
Jim. You did divert us
On
off track.
Monday, June the 10th, you didn't speak to Alec any during the day, as I understand it.
Monday would have been June 7th, but I don't remember.
I'm sorry,
That's
Monday,
okay.
June 7th,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't remember speaking to
Oh, yeah,
him
the
on that
attorneys are
day.
having their own little
Earlier in the
moment.
day.
I don't think they care about the
But you
jury
had
at
some
all.
things you needed to talk to him about,
Chitty chitty chat chat.
and you mentioned a case where, a potential products liability case,
Yes, sir.
and that whoever was holding the equipment wanted to, either you got to come inspect it or don't
It's just-
inspect it.
Yeah, they wanted us
None
to
of
go
this
ahead and get it
matters for
inspected
anything that we're
so
here
that they
for.
could put it back into operation. We needed to gather what we wanted from it so they could repair it and put it back in operation.
And so, Alec calling you on Monday, June the 7th was not surprising, right?
No, sir.
I mean.
That's a good
you talk
question.
multiple times a day, you just hadn't talked this day.
Yes, sir.
And,
That actually attacks the state's case of
When,
manufactured,
and you would talk to him when he was
alibi.
traveling, to the office and back to Moselle frequently. I mean, it wasn't the first time you'd ever talked to him when he left Moselle or coming back to Moselle.
I mean,
Oh, we've gotten to.
I don't
we've
know
gotten
where
to
somebody
the
is when I'm talking to
alibi
him on the
part.
phone.
Good.
But, I mean, it oftentimes, he would say, I'm, headed to Moselle, or I'm leaving the office. I mean, it felt like a lot of times when he do the same thing I do, you make your phone calls while you're in the car.
Right.
Because you're busy doing other stuff if you're at the office or wherever else.
Me,
But it
always
was a
me.
little more than that. I mean, you knew that when he would coming up to Moselle, the phone would
Phone
normally
service-
drop,
Phone service is bad out there, yes, sir.
and you'd drop a call, would you not?
Also a good
Yes, sir.
argument. Phone
And
service is
you've
bad
been
out
in
there.
Moselle a lot, haven't you?
Yes, sir.
And
Paul had enough
and
service to
calls get
call.
dropped out there
Brogan
frequently, do they
Gibson.
not?
Yes, sir.
And you can frankly be in one part of the house and maybe have coverage, and be in another part of the house and not have coverage, right?
I don't really know about parts of the house, but I mean, there'd be times that I'd be on the phone that I would drop service or not be able to get on the internet or do things like that.
And
It's spotty.
Paul could make
and
calls,
just
but he
driving
couldn't send
around
the
the
video.
rural areas, I guess you know some areas where there's just dead spots, and you just know there's going to be a dead spot coming up.
Very much so.
And there were such spots on Moselle Road, were they not?
For me, when I was trying to use my phone, yes, sir.
They're trying to establish a timeline. These are good questions from the defense. I just think we could have gotten
No,
there
no,
without
you
talking
went over
about
your,
who's sorority sisters and how
your
much
phone
everybody
bill
loves Alex's
to get
daddy.
times for phone calls, and you went through them, but I want to go through some more detailed documents that are in evidence.
Oh, God.
Reviewing your phone calls with Alec on the 7th, and Defense Exhibit 60 is in evidence.
Again?
And Doug, if you'll go to page 3078. And
Do it, Doug.
let me give you your
They have not
copy of your
talked much about the
Verizon
extender.
bill. I guess Verizon, was that the service provider?
Yes, sir.
451, it's in evidence. I'm going to hand it to you and just compare along to some of this detailed information.
Spoonman asked, do you want him
And
to
Doug,
get
if you'll
off,
go
Emily?
down
I
to
want him
the
to get off this
bottom entry,
topic.
91214.
I want him to move on to things that matter. But if you're talking about, do I want Alec to get off? I want the
Yeah, that pulled
prosecution
up.
to prove a case that we can follow so that we can determine if it seems like he did it or not. Because right now,
Can you
we're all
you
just
see this
confused
and
as fuck.
compare it to your phone bill, but it says Alec Murdaugh
This
called
case
Chris
has been a
Wilson
mess.
at 9:12 and 14 seconds, and it was a 42-second call. Does that sound about right? I don't know that your Verizon bill is that accurate on the time?
Is this supposed to be June the 7th, Monday, June the 7th?
Yes, sir.
My phone bill that I pulled and provided, or my phone records that I pulled and provided to SLED, say I had an incoming phone call from phone number ending 1227, which is Alec's cell phone number, at 9:11 p.m. that lasted.
No, the judge cannot interrupt the
2
line
minutes.
of testimony.
Okay. And
The attorneys,
so some of these
Have to
extraction
object.
data that's in evidence says the call was 42 seconds long. You think you talked to him for 2 minutes, or, and you may have been billed for 2 minutes, but when you got the call, you said,
who's
"I'm
billed by
fixing
the
to
minute
pump,
on their
can I
cell
call
phone,
you back?"
Jim?
Yeah.
Is that a 2-minute call, or is that a 45-second call?
Hey, Bo, how you doing? I'm doing all right. I got my hands in the middle of this. Can I call you back? Yeah, sure, no problem. I mean, probably shorter than 2 minutes. I don't know if that's the phone ringing and the talking.
Right.
I don't know how that works.
Okay.
Thanks for the
And then,
recreation.
but that was the call, and there was nothing about Alec's demeanor that alarmed you during that conversation, right?
No, sir.
He wasn't breathing heavy, was he?
No, sir.
He didn't sound panicky in any way, did he?
Not panicky, no, sir.
Just a regular conversation with Alec?
All conversations with Alec are a little bit scattered, but no, he didn't sound out of that.
Feel
ordinary.
attacked.
All right, and then you call him back.
I did.
Sometime around 9:20? What's your Verizon bill say?
9:20 p.m., a phone call from me.
They're
That
tying in
lasted
how
to him,
close in
lasted
time
3
this is
minutes.
to the
All right, and if you'll go
prosecution's
to page
timeline,
3082
which is actually really smart,
of Exhibit 60.
because at
and if
9:11, that's right after
Doug,
Alec
pull up
gets into the car to
call
leave
at
the house.
9:20 with Mr. Wilson.
If they're saying that the murders happened at 8:49, 9:11 is what? 20 minutes after. So
Now, I mean,
they
it
are
really doesn't
using this to
matter
attack
whether
the prosecution's timeline. It just took a
Verizon bill
real
says 2
fucking
to
long
3
time to get
minutes. This
there.
says 131 seconds, but
So
this is you calling Alec back, correct?
Yes, sir.
that's why this call at
And
9:11
in that
p.m.
call,
matters.
he is, you got the same demeanor,
Yes, sir.
not breathing heavy,
No, sir.
not being frantic in any way?
No, sir.
Just
Not that I heard.
normal Alec.
Alec
Yes, sir.
lied to you
And
and
he-
stole from you and lied to your face about
He
it. Did he
tells you
sound
he just
normal
gets to his
then?
mom's, and that's how you end the call, right?
He says he's either getting to his mom or about to get to his mom's. I think he said, I'm about to get to my mom's. Let me
Okay.
call you when I'm leaving here.
All right.
Mr. Griffin, I thought he was leaving the office for whatever reason. I don't have any reason to know that. He didn't say that. But I just assumed he had kind of worked late at the office and was headed.
Sure.
headed
Why
to
are
check
you
on
just
his mom before he
offering
went home.
things?
Okay.
He's like, hopefully this helps.
He said, I'm about to get to my mom's. He didn't even say where he had been earlier or anything like that. Just, I'm about to get to my mom's.
Huh. He's
Well,
helping.
Can I call you?
Or he's
Can I
trying to
call you
help
later?
the defense.
Would it strike you as
With
odd
that.
that he'd be going to visit his mom at 9:20 in the evening?
No, sir.
He's trying to help.
I know he visited his mom often. I thought it was mostly during the day, like he'd swing over there for lunch, check on his mom and dad, but it didn't strike me as out of the ordinary for him to go in the evening. I knew sometimes he would go later.
And were you aware that his dad had been put back in the hospital on that day?
Yes, sir. Or I knew he was, I don't know that I knew for sure he was. I know on that Sunday, Alec told me he was either, his daddy was being taken to the hospital or was taken to the hospital that day.
And from your knowledge, how frequently would Alec go by and visit his mom and dad?
Almost every day.
Almost every day,
Yes, sir.
when he was in town.
Yes, sir.
Jim's doing the exact
And,
same thing with repeating
and
the
was-
testimony
did Alec
for
work
impact.
Odd hours, late hours?
He
This
would
jury is
usually
gonna be
somebody that was
tired.
working later in the evening than a lot of other people would be. Yes, sir.
So
I don't
you,
think he got started as early as everybody else does.
Oh, he's heard
So
all the
I
other
guess-
testimony.
from what you're testifying, his demeanor would have been in his communications with you on this phone call at 9:20, same as it would have been any day he leaves the office. There's nothing out of the ordinary.
Nothing struck me as out of the ordinary, no, sir.
And you think in this call, you brought up that, you needed to talk to him about the equipment?
I know I did that because they were starting to get frustrated with us and said this thing needs to get inspected so we can put it back in service. So we were needing to get that scheduled.
And he cut the call short before you finished your conversation about the equipment, saying he was pulled up to his mom or about to get to his mom. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
He's like, I already said it on
And,
direct 4 times. I'm tired of saying
And
it.
then the next entry, which I'm not sure it wouldn't show up on your Verizon
Oh.
bill, but if you'll go to page 3086.
Lego Mom, don't say sorry, I believe Miss
text at
Smith.
9:52:15,
I believe Miss
which I
Smith,
believe that's
too.
in-
Mr. Griffin, I don't think we talked about the equipment deal when he told me he was pulling up to his mom's house.
Okay.
I mean, I asked about how his mom was doing and I asked about how his dad was doing. And I said, hey, I need to talk to you. I might have said, hey, I need to talk to you about this equipment case and I got something else I need to talk to you about work. We didn't get into any details about it. Because he said, I'm about to pull up to mom's. I'm pulling up to mom's. Let me call you back when I finish there.
When I am weighting these witnesses, I am going from
Well,
the
one thing we
outside
know
in.
you didn't talk about is the Ferris feed.
Yes, sir.
Outside in, I'm giving more
no
weight,
issue
me
as far as
personally,
you
to the
about
witnesses
Ferris.
who are not part of the
No
boys
issue
club.
with that, no, sir.
And then it narrows in. So when it
So,
comes to what Miss Smith said,
according to,
I believe her
exhibit that's in
retelling
evidence,
versus Chris
There's
Wilson's.
a text at 5:52:15 seconds. Just call me if you're up.
So
and
she
I
knows
think
'cause she
you
was there.
Put that text into evidence.
So, Shelley Smith said she worked
And this state's exhibit
the
40
overnights with his parents
452.
as a caretaker, and
Yes,
Alec
sir.
was never there at night. That was her shift. She was there. Chris
that the
Wilson might have
fact?
had the impression
Yes,
that
sir.
he went to visit his mom at
And
whenever.
what time did your
The
Verizon-
person who's at the
well,
house knows.
I guess you printed that off your phone, is that right?
This exhibit, 451
Jen's
only
woodworking
shows my
things.
phone
Oops,
calls,
I
doesn't
slept through
show
the whole
text.
morning. You didn't miss anything.
Well,
We all slept through
The
the whole
picture of the
morning
text
too.
message has a time on it, right?
Yeah, June 7th, 9:52 PM.
Okay, and the extraction record says 9:52:15 seconds, but
I love that there's
But
no
you-
foundation for any of
you
this, and no one
received
gives a
that
fuck.
text?
I
Everybody's
did.
just like,
Okay.
it's
And then-
chill.
If you'll
Cool.
go
Evidence, schmevidence.
right
Who cares about the
below
rules?
that,
We're just doing
there's
it
a
our
phone
own way.
call that
Everybody's
you
cool with
made.
it.
You made to Alex at 9:52:59.
But I'm getting more and more Chris is seeming to try to add
On your
things in to
Verizon bill,
help
you see 9:52 phone call to
the
Alex?
defense, or at
Yes,
least that's
sir.
my perception right now. It might be
Now-
because I'm cranky.
Earlier, you testified that was a missed call, and you didn't talk to him. I mean, the extraction record says it was for 42 seconds. Do you think you called him, got him, and the call dropped? Or do you think it's a missed call?
I don't remember talking to him on that call. I either got his voice message or it didn't answer at all. That's why I called back 1 minute later.
That's his memory.
Okay.
He may have picked up, but I didn't speak to him and I didn't leave a message.
Okay. Well, then the next call on the log, Doug, is 9:53:55, and what time's your Verizon bill say that you made that next call?
9:53 p.m.
Okay. And so right after you tried,
The timeline's important.
according to this exhibit, it was like 42 seconds after you tried the first call,
Yes, sir.
you tried him back.
Yes, sir.
Doug
and-
is the
and when you got him,
tech
Is
assistant
that
for the
when you
defense.
talked about the equipment inspection?
So when he's talking
That's
to
when I
Doug,
would have said, how's your mama doing?
that's what he's talking
You
to.
know, how's your dad? We need to talk about this piece of equipment. We got to deal with this inspection that's upcoming. And I got some motions that I think it's some motions that I need some help with, something that I need a little guidance on to bounce off of you. So he was about to get back to Moselle or about to get back home and, you know, may lose service or was about to get back home and could we talk tomorrow?
I mean, did he in fact tell you, I'm about to drop service? And
I don't think he said I'm about to drop service. I think he said I'm about to get back to Moselle. You know, I may lose service. Can we talk tomorrow?
When you're friends like that and you know that
again,
they don't have service near
demeanor
the
is
house, they don't need to
perfectly
say, I'm going to
normal.
lose
And this
service. They say, I'm
last
almost coming. You
conversation
just
had
know
with
what's
him
about to
at
happen.
9:53, correct?
Nothing stood out as different to me.
And he wasn't breathing heavy, he wasn't being frantic, nothing out of the ordinary, correct?
Nothing that I heard was out of the ordinary.
Would we
no, sir.
expect him to be breathing heavy? That's a strange,
And then you went
okay.
to bed and you got notified by your wife and the phone was blowing up and you immediately got in the car and went to Moselle, is that right?
Immediately, yes, sir.
This trial
And
has
you-
burned through my
you got
patience.
there
For all of
roughly
you who are
about
like, today's
1 in the
spicy
morning?
Emily,
About
my
1 in
patience
the
have been
morning,
burned
yes, sir.
through.
And you were directed to the main house
Yes, sir.
and there you think
Madison,
Alec
that's a fair
was
point.
already in the main house?
Could the
I know he
defense
was
claim that
already there
Alec
'cause I
Murdaugh was on
walked in,
pills
the
and
first
sleeping?
thing I
That's why
did
he
was
did
walk
not hear the
over.
gunshots.
He was crying and
They could
I watched
try
crying and
to,
just walked over and hugged his neck. We didn't say a word.
You remember what he was wearing?
but the Snapchat video.
Don't.
They could try to say that, but the
Who
Snapchat
was in
video.
I mean, I think I remember a white shirt, but I don't remember for sure.
You've been watching the
Well, when you were there,
testimony,
did SLED
sir.
agents come and take his clothes?
I was not there that I remember seeing SLED agents take his clothes or anything like that.
He got there after
If they
SLED agents
did,
took
I
his
was
clothes.
somewhere else
He
in
got
my
there after
house.
1 a.m.
I did not see any of that take
I
place.
don't
was
think he
told
remembered a
that.
white shirt at all.
They did, but I did not see that.
Well, you were told that when you were in the house?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I think he got
Does
there
it appear
after
that
the
they had
SLED
already
agents
taken his
took
clothes when you saw
the
Alex?
clothes.
I have no idea.
The prosecution needs to nail him on
Or
that.
did you see him change clothes during the period of time you were with him?
Not while I was there, no, sir.
So while you were there, he had the same clothes on from when you got there to when you left?
As far as I remember, yes, sir. I mean, I wouldn't, as far as I remember, yes, I was focused on my friend, his son. I wasn't paying attention to
There's no
whether he
question
changed clothes or
pending.
anything like that, but I don't remember him changing clothes or anybody taking his clothes, but I wasn't really focused on that.
And what was Alex's demeanor that night?
He was destroyed.
He was destroyed.
Yes, sir. He was crying, quiet, just whimpering,
And you-
trying to be gracious to the people that had come at times, but
He called everyone, though.
I mean, none of us knew what to say. None of us knew what to do. You know, there was a lot of quiet.
I want to ask you about the comment he was trying to be gracious. Is when
Hospitable?
Alec meets people coming up, is he polite, respectful? Is that his normal habit?
Character.
Yes, sir. He's good with people.
We've heard a lot about how he's good with people.
I mean, he does it.
So good, in fact, they didn't know he was stealing
He's
from
the kind
them.
of person that I doesn't ever seem to have met a stranger, always seems to talk to people.
Right.
He might have been using his friend Chris
One
as
of
an
the things
alibi with
that,
phone calls. I've used my friend Chris as an alibi when I was hanging out with my
let's
husband
set
when we
the
were
table.
first dating.
You were there, and a number of his law
My friend
partners
Chris
were
is
there.
traveling
that
with
right?
me.
As I recall, yes, sir.
So you remember Mark
She
Ball
can see
being
me
there?
talking.
I don't remember Mark. I remember Mark being there at points and times, but I'm not sure about that night when I walked in.
Well, let me,
Do that at a break.
Ronnie Crosby,
I remember Ronnie being there. Austin Crosby, Lee Cope,
Austin Lee, Randy,
Randy, yes, sir.
I guess his brother John Marvin.
Tom Marvin was already there.
We don't know
I
about
think-
any
I don't
inheritance.
remember if Buster had already gotten there or not. I think he
From
got
Grandpa.
there right after I got there.
And then y'all were there for a number of hours, and everyone said, we just need to go and try to get some rest. And so you went to your office and laid down on the couch and tried to sleep, right?
Yes, sir.
And you were back at 9 in the morning?
Yeah, somewhere thereabouts 9 shortly after.
And were the same lawyers there?
Pretty much. I mean, there was a lot of comings and goings, and at very points in times, Alec's partners would some be there and some not. But yes, sir,
Hard
pretty
with
much
the trying to
same
prove he's a nice guy after
Num-
they've
same
heard
number of
about the
people and the
stealing
same
from the
people the
clients.
next morning.
It kind
Right.
of shifts the
it-
perspective.
Some point in time,
That's
there
hard to
was a
counteract.
discussion and a recommendation that you agreed with that Alec not speak to any law enforcement without somebody with him, right?
Well, we were standing around in the driveway talking, and I think it was Lee Cope, Mark Ball. I don't remember if Ronnie Crosby was in that
Mark
conversation.
Bowles, the unbuttoned shirt
couple
dude
other
from the
people.
first interview.
And there was some discussion about Alec's interaction with SLED. And the discussion that was had was, look, he probably doesn't need to interact with SLED without by himself, because don't know what state of mind he's in and don't know what the circumstances are. But he
agree with
also
that.
doesn't need 7 or 8 lawyers trying to advise him or deal with him. I made it very clear that I
with that
wanted to
too.
be his friend and not his lawyer, that I didn't feel comfortable with that. That one person needed to be, for lack of a better term, the point person.
And the concern was that
And the point person
He
should have
wasn't
said, don't
in
talk to
his-
the police. But they
in a
didn't.
state of mind to do so, to have conversations with law enforcement.
Well, I mean, Mr.
Good
Griffin,
questioning.
we're all lawyers, and even if you don't practice criminal law at all, even if all you do is civil law, every lawyer knows that generally criminal lawyers advise their clients not to interact with law enforcement without their involvement or at least their approval.
No,
And so every one of the lawyers standing there either knew that or should have known that.
But
Including
So
you,
whether
Mr.
it was his
Griffin.
state of mind or whether it's just the general, what we're all taught and trained, but yeah, we all felt like that Alec wasn't in a position where he needed to or maybe was even able to talk to SLED by himself.
and that's,
I felt that way, and everybody else expressed the same thing.
and then that gets to my point. You didn't believe he was able to talk to SLED because he was so distraught and destroyed over the murder of his wife and son.
That wasn't I'm not trying to
I didn't
argue with
think
it.
he
That wasn't a
should.
decision for me to make. That's why I did not want to be acting as his attorney. I wanted to be his friend. That's what I was there for. That would be a decision for whoever was going to be representing for him and his representation. Whoever it was going to be at that point in time, whoever was chosen as the point person, that was a decision for them to make.
This
about
goes to
how
the
he would
defense's
interact with
argument.
SLED.
He didn't
I
really
understand,
lie to
but
SLED.
you
He
agreed
was
with the
distraught.
recommendation that he was in the state of mind to sit down and talk to SLED by himself,
I agreed that he did not need to interact with SLED by himself. Yes, sir.
He's not going to, Chris Wilson's not going to
based
go
on
quite
his
as,
state of mind.
he's not going to go that far.
He was destroyed. He was upset.
Asked and answered calls for speculation. Prosecution,
And-
you should be
And I don't know
objecting now.
whether he was able to talk with SLED at that point in time by himself
Your
or not.
case is about to die on
But
the
I
vine,
knew that that's not something that
prosecutors.
somebody should do.
What,
This
do
is
you remember
important for the
testifying
defense.
I mean,
for the
I've done
state?
criminal work in my past, way back in the past, and that's the advice that I would give every one of my clients.
Where's the state?
Do you remember testifying before the state grand jury,
Oh,
stating he, Alec, wasn't in the state of mind to do so, and that we all didn't need to be his lawyer?
I don't remember specifically saying that.
I'll show you page 152.
He said he doesn't remember. That's not going to refresh his
22 through
recollection.
25.
Sure.
See if it refreshes your recollection. Sure.
He was not in a good state of mind, I will tell you that.
This
152
goes to
down
the
at the
defense saying he didn't lie to SLED about not being at the kennels. He wasn't in a state of mind to say it. That's what this is
You
going
want
to.
me to read it out loud or
And
just read it to
Chris
myself?
Wilson-
Does it refresh your recollection that was your testimony?
Chris Wilson is trying to be very careful about the way
Yes,
he
sir, I
parses
said-
this, because this goes directly to.
He wasn't in the state of mind to do so, and that we all didn't need to be his lawyer.
You can't just
I
read
didn't
it
want
into
to be
the
his lawyer, I was his friend. I didn't
The
want to be in
rules
the
of
murder
evidence have
scenario.
left the building. The rules of evidence exist not in this court.
He wasn't in a good state of mind, that's for sure, correct?
No, sir. Nobody was.
Then Jim, why'd you let him talk to the police, man? If he wasn't in the position to talk to the police, then he shouldn't have. He did. And the jury will get to
No, you
decide how
got
he
there
looked on
about
those
1
videos.
in the morning, and there were a lot of people around Alec at that point in time?
There were already people inside the house around him, yes, sir.
And then when you left, Alec was with
I think
Randy,
he-
John Marvin, Buster by that time?
I think the decision was made they would go to, that at least Buster and Ellett would go to Alameda and spend the night. And I don't remember whether John Marvin or Randy went with them, but they were leaving as a family.
And as far as you know, that they left as a family, and they came back as a family the next day?
Yes, sir.
And when you got there the next day, more people showed up around Alec?
Yes,
correct?
sir.
And I think the Branstetters showed up eventually?
I don't remember. Yeah, I think Papa T and Miss Ken were there the next day.
Michelle, I think Alec thought he could talk his
Now-
way out of it, because he can talk his way out of anything. I don't think Alec thought talking to the police would be a problem, because I think he
The
believes
immediate
himself
days
to be very
following
persuasive.
Maggie and Paul's murder, Alec spent a lot of time down in Somerville. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
And that's where Papa T and
Where Maggie's parents
Miss
lived.
Kennedy, and spent a lot of time with them.
Seemed to, yes, sir.
And then he would stay with John Marvin down at Okatee. You mentioned that
That's
you
where
thought-
I'm sorry, that's where I thought he was staying a lot, yes, sir.
And he would stay with his brother Randy,
You're
and
repeating
and then they
yourself.
would go to Edisto.
And I repeat
He and
myself.
Buster sometimes.
There were
this-
several times that he and Buster would go to Edisto, and
This is all
I'd
asked
try
and
to
answered.
go down and
all of it.
just
all
see
of
them there. I
this
think they were just.
is asked and answered.
I mean, I know Buster, and I think they were just trying to kind of go somewhere where there weren't quite as many people around.
And you begged him.
Why?
I think you said.
Because of the boat case, though.
Encouraged him to come to the trial lawyers convention at Hilton Head so that maybe,
Oh, no, because of the murders.
he
Okay.
and Buster could have
I got lost as to
some
time.
normal time.
At least to play golf with us one day. I told him he at least should do that.
And you were concerned he had lost a lot of weight, had he not, or?
He didn't seem to be sleeping or eating very well.
Asked and
And he was-
answered. Asked and answered.
And as his friend, you
John
You
Hooks in the chat said, I'm a
tried to
25-year
give him a
lawyer. I've never seen any hearing with so few
shoulder to lean
objections.
on, an ear to,
In 17 years, John,
Talk
I have
to you,
never.
right?
Yes, sir.
I have never.
and he asked you rhetorically,
My trial ad professor would
What
have
are we gonna
kittens
do
over
without
this
Maggie and
trial.
Paul?
It's just ridiculous.
remember that?
I don't remember those exact words, but I mean, he said he didn't know what he was going to do without them. Yes, sir. I don't know if he said, what are we going to do?
And he told you that he just couldn't go back to Moselle, that he was going to have to sell it because he just can't go back out there. Do you remember
He
that?
talked to me about he and Buster were going to talk about selling Moselle. He didn't.
Okay.
I mean, that was Paul's thing. Paul loved that property and being on that property. And I don't know that Buster loved it as much. He did, but I
This
don't know that
witness
he
is
loved it
allowed
as
to
much
lead,
as Paul.
Mike.
And I don't
This
know
is the
that they.
defense. They're allowed to
you know,
lead. It's
that
cross-examination.
Ellie just
I know
talked to
you
me about
can't
he didn't know
tell
that he was going to keep it.
the difference between cross and
And that he
direct in this
didn't go
trial
back.
because those
I don't
distinctions
think
don't
he ever went
exist,
back out there and
but
spent another night.
this is
I don't know
cross.
that for sure, but I never talked to him when he was there.
And you advised him
Thank
just
you,
take it
RDs.
one day at a
It's a
time.
very kind super chat.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. If you sell a t-shirt with, if you're not part of the boys club, you don't have to follow their rules, I want one. We'll figure out something. And I think we might narrow it down to if you're not part of the club, you don't have to follow their rules. Because there are a lot of clubs a lot of us have been excluded from. Not just the boys club. There are a lot of those different clubs. Alec's having a very large reaction to very mild testimony. It's odd to see today. All of today has been strange. All of this has been strange. I am just. The chat's like, wait, this is Cross? I had no clue. Right. Because
Mr.
Cross.
Wilson, do you see Buster in the courtroom? Stand up, Buster.
I do.
Can you identify
Is that Buster?
Buster
Yes, sir.
for the jury? Great.
And is Brooklyn seated next to him? Can you stand up, Brooklyn? Is that Brooklyn?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Your Honor. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Your Honor, briefly.
Redirect.
You were asked by Mr. Griffin
Okay.
on June 7th, whether or not you brought up anything about the Ferris fees, but at that point in time, you hadn't had to cover $192,000 for the defendant, had you?
No, sir, I had not.
And
It
as far
was
as,
July the 15th, 16th, 17th, somewhere around in that range, middle of July, that I had to cover that $192,000.
that he called you with some story about how he had the money in the wrong structures and he needed to send it back to you, but he was 192 short.
Yes, sir.
Facts.
I'm sorry.
Don't lead the witness.
Facts.
Did the defendant tell you
There's our
that
objection.
the issue of notifying his firm had been handled
Yes, sir.
about the fees?
Before I wrote the checks in March and afterwards.
Before June the 7th, you were asked about that call with Lee Cope.
Yes,
And
sir.
did you talk about some fees and expenses that were still pending?
Not
Lee Cope?
Not with Lee Cope, no, sir.
What did you talk about with Lee Cope?
Lee asked me if all the money in the case, the Mack Trucks
it's
case, had been
hearsay.
dispersed. And I told him that it hadn't. We were holding back some lien money, some medical bill money. And I was in Hampton,
Brooklyn
I believe,
is
trying a case down there the whole
Buster's
week, and he approached me while I was working in and out of their office sometime. And I think that's when he approached me and spoke to me about it, and I told him I'd have to check. I wasn't in the office.
Did you tell Lee Cope at that time that you had already dispersed the fees and written them directly to Richard Alexander Murdaugh?
No, sir, he didn't ask me about the fees.
Right. It was a narrow question. Has all the funds been dispersed?
You were asked about
Been
the
dispersed? No.
phone
Okay.
call that took place, or
That's
phone
fair.
calls, series of phone calls that you had with the defendant on the night of the murders, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he called you first, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then he sent you a text saying you up?
They're
Yes,
just
sir.
repeating themselves to see who can have the
In those
last
phone
say of
calls,
the
you were
evidence
the
they
one who
want, but
raised
it's
the
not
issue about the
breaking any
equipment
new
issue,
ground.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Were you the one who raised the
Redirect
issue
should be for
about the equipment?
new
I
ground.
did. I mean,
or
I
to
kept up with our
respond directly
deadlines
to
and things
Cross.
that needed to be dealt with.
Not new ground, but to directly respond to Cross, not to just redo your direct. It's
And I want to say
only
that
to address issues
the
in
lawyer
Cross.
had reached out to me sometime
There's no
around
question
that time. I
pending,
don't know whether they
sir.
couldn't get Alec or just chose me to be the person to reach out to, but I was being contacted.
You were asked about him going to visit his mother at Alameda, typically during the day. And were you aware that he didn't go visit his father that day, despite the news that he had been put in the hospital?
I don't know. I don't think we talked about that night on those phone calls, whether he had gone to see his father or not. I asked how his father was, but I don't think he told me whether he had gone to see his father or not.
You were asked about your conversations that night with him, and I think you said he was acting like the normal Alex.
Yes, sir.
And you were asked about the fact of your observations of him as a husband,
Yes, sir.
as a father.
Yes, sir.
You said you saw no erratic behavior over the years that you've known him,
No, sir.
saw no evidence of opioid use over the years that you've known him.
No, sir.
That would actually be a
You
yes,
said
sir.
that
No,
you came
wait,
from a
fix
prominent
it.
law firm.
No, 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 no,
Yes,
no.
sir.
Prominent
Creighton,
family?
You're not
Yes, sir.
listening. You've never seen any indication of
respected him
opioid
as a lawyer?
use.
Yes, sir.
No, sir
That
means
his clients
yes.
trusted him.
Yes, sir.
Object.
And leading and leading and leading.
Was
Jim,
the defendant
object to every
effective in closing
question.
argument?
Yes, sir. Very.
Did the defendant show emotion in closing argument?
I mean, yes, sir, he did.
Was the defendant good with people?
Very good with people. That's one of Alec's strengths, is with clients and people he met, connecting to people that he, didn't know quite as personally. He could make connections with people. He seemed to know what made people tick.
He seemed to know
He knew
exactly
was
what to
important
say to
people.
get his
He could
way.
spot issues and address issues in a case. When you got him to focus, he could handle those things.
I feel attacked.
Did your kids grow up together?
They did.
Did you try cases with him?
Creighton! Oh, he's working
Done
up to...
business with him
Did
over
you
the years?
really
Have
know
you done
him?
business with him over the years?
Yes, sir, lots.
It's
Have you
not
been
the
roommates with him?
flex you
Yes,
think
sir.
it is.
When you
My question
covered
was-
$192,000
my
for
question was
him, did you trust him and believe him when what he was telling you?
I believe that he would pay me back and that what he had told me happened had happened.
On September 4th,
And I knew I had to cover that money with my
Oh my
trust
God, there's
account.
no question pending.
yes,
Oh
sir.
my God, oh my
on
God, oh my
September
God.
4th, 2021, did he confess to you the truth of his life that those of whom were close to him, no one knew?
He confessed to me things about him that I didn't know.
And you had no idea about any of that?
No, sir.
And he said it had been going on for years, the reality of his life.
He told me that he had been addicted to opioids, and I think he said either for 20 or over 20 years,
And also,
and that he had been stealing money from his clients in the firm.
and that was a lightning bolt because you had no idea, despite being his best friend.
Leading.
Leading, argumentative.
Were you one of his best friends?
Yes, sir.
Did you have any idea about any of that had been going on for a decade?
I had been told by Lee Cope the day before in that phone call that Alec had been stealing from his firm and from clients, and that he had a drug problem and was going into rehab, and that's the first I would have ever known that.
September 4th, 2021.
That was Friday, September the 3rd, when I talked to Lee Cope. And then again, when I talked to Alec on Saturday, September the 4th.
We know all of this, Creighton.
Hit you out of the blue.
Like a ton of bricks. I mean, it floored me when Lee called me, and
Out of the blue.
I never expected that.
Thank you, nothing further.
Further questions?
Oh,
Thank you.
thank God it's time for lunch. They're going to break for lunch. What time is it on the East? It's 1 o'clock on the, it's almost 1 o'clock on the East. They're going to break for lunch instead of calling another witness, I imagine. So they're letting, I think the judge is going to send them out to lunch. I think the judge
We'll
is,
recess now for 1 hour and 15 minutes. Please go to the jury room. Please do not discuss the case.
what time does that put us at? All right, the judge will come back and tell us an hour and 15 minutes. Somebody tell me what time I need to be back here. Creighton tries to make all of his points and redirect. The judge has just walked off the bench. The judge is like, fuck it, I'm out. I get it. I'm going to answer some questions, and then we are going to also take a break for the lunch hour. 2:15. So I will be back at 2:10 Eastern. Like what is that? Like an hour? By the time I leave, it'll be like an hour. So right around 2:10 is when I will be back for the afternoon. So what happened this morning? Well, let's do a summary. Miguelino, will you make the afternoon stream public if it isn't already, so we can redirect there, so we can all take a break and gather our thoughts? Let's do a summary of the morning. The car guy testified briefly. The end of cross from yesterday, which was like, so you don't have any location data? No. Okay, great. Then we got into Chris Wilson's testimony, a lot in the financial crimes. The defense cross-examined a lot about character. Alec was a loving family man. His vacations were always family vacations. Everything he was doing was about his family. But Creighton went into the financial crimes at more length than I think he needed to. And I don't think, for me, he didn't go into what happened the day of the murder and afterwards in September enough. He went into, these are the checks, and this is why he was taking the fees, and he put them all in his own name, but he didn't get into the stuff that happened after the 7th of June and didn't really dive into what that would have meant and what that meant for Chris Wilson. He could have asked, and if your trust account had been short, what repercussions were you facing? How bad is this for you? How bad of a position did Alec put you in? So your friend stole from you. You've never been paid back. There was a lot more there that could have been covered, but instead we got a lot of checks being waved around, and it's really, really hard. And so that's it. Like, that's all that happened this morning. So it's time to fack around. I know I've left a loop open for those of you that have been here all morning. And for those of you that have been here all morning, don't forget to do the YouTube things. God love you for still being here. Thank you, Lawnards. We had over 35,000 of you here this morning. So you know where to find me on YouTube. The Quick Bits channel is where I've got all my shorter content, shorter than this, and summaries. Yesterday's Emily show is about Tom Girardi. If you want to hear about another disgraced attorney who is not charged with murder, but charged with financial crimes and stealing from clients, that's over there. But we're going to fack around real quick. We're going to get to some super chats, some questions, and what happened as I was landing with less than 10 minutes to make my connection before doors closed.
Oh,
Because we really just need a palate cleanser and to just like take a moment. I was traveling yesterday, and I had a 45-minute connection, which is normally not a problem. I've not had a ton of problems with flights being late out of Nashville. Often this flight was running late. It happens, but by the time we were coming down to land, I was like, oh, we have literally 10 minutes till doors close on the other plane in Minneapolis, St. Paul, which if you've traveled through Minneapolis, St. Paul, it's a beautiful airport. There's like a fucking mall in the middle of it and everything. It's great, but it is big. It is a very big airport. So the gentleman sitting in front of me and I had been talking a little bit before we boarded. He's like, as we're standing there waiting to board, he's like, my connection's about 45 minutes. I'm like, my connection's also about 45 minutes. He's like, okay, well, this isn't looking great. I'm like, nope. He's like, maybe we'll make up some time in the air. I'm like, yep. Instead, we hit, thunderstorms in the air. So we did not make up time in the air. And he's like, this is fantastic. I'm like, this is fantastic. So as we go to deplane, I'm like, how are you doing? He's like, well, my Delta app has already put me on a morning flight tomorrow. And so I opened my Delta app. My Delta app had also already put me on a morning flight for today, which tomorrow. So I'm looking at my app going, why have you already rebooked me? Why have you already rebooked me? Why have you already rebooked me? I'm like, I have 10 minutes. And also time is an illusion. And so in my ADHD world, when I tell my husband I have 10 minutes, sometimes it'll be like an hour. So I'm like, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It will be fine. And then the flight attendant, as we were taxiing, came on and said, we have passengers for Phoenix. We need to let them off first. And I was like, that's me. That's me. I'm a passenger for me. It's me. It's me. And then she says something I never expected, ever. She said, we have a car. A what? So me and one other passenger go to the front and go to get off. And instead of going up the jetway, we go out the side door and down the steps onto the tarmac, and there is a car. It's not just a car. There is a new Porsche Cayenne waiting for us. They have grabbed our luggage from the plane, and there is a Porsche Cayenne waiting to drive us. And then they drove us from the bottom of the steps on our plane to the steps on our other plane. And I was like, what? There's a car? They do that? The gentleman who drove us was so kind. And he's like, we want to make sure you get to your flight. I almost burst into tears at this point. I was like, thank you so much. I really did. A, I didn't want to miss streaming this morning. But B, I really didn't want to have to try to find a hotel in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and try to find my luggage and then try to get on another plane in the morning and get up super early. I just really, really didn't want to. So I was so thankful. So by the time they got us to the other plane, I have stopped hyperventilating because I thought we only had 10 minutes. And they dropped us off at the bottom of the steps and just walked us up into the plane. I was like, this is what fancy people do when they travel. Obviously, not me, but I was so fucking thankful for Delta because they just handled it. And again, we got there before doors closed because they drove us like all under Minneapolis St. Paul Airport, which was fascinating. My mom was a flight attendant most of my life. She retired after 30 years of flying, but airport security when I was growing up was much different than airport security now. So my mom would take us to work with her at times when she was going to pick stuff up, and we would get to be down on the tarmac in the trams that they would transport back and forth from the employee parking lot. And there were times when I was traveling and my mom was riding jump seat and we would travel that way, and it was so fun. So I'm like, Mother, you are never going to believe what happened. She's like, they sent a Porsche. I'm like, it was a Porsche Cayenne. I've never been in one. It was so fucking cool. It had a glass roof like the Teslas, but like it was so nice. And I didn't have to run and be sweaty and out of breath because disgusting. That makes me feel disgusting. I didn't have to run. And the amount of luggage I have for a very short trip, to include like my soundboard, is all being carried by me because that's all in my like carry-on little wheelie. So I would have been like wheeling with like luggage. It would have been a disaster. I never would have made it. I never would have made it. And I was so thankful. Who was the other guy? I don't know. He owns some like medical supply company or something. I wasn't listening. I was trying to stop breathing. So it was so different than a double moonroof, though. I saw the chat, double moonroof. It was glass the entire way, like the whole way. It was very bouge. It was very fun. So anyway, that is the only reason I made it on time for this morning. The only reason I made it on time this morning is because the amazing crew at Delta got us off of the plane and onto the other plane and just absolutely took care of us. I always fly Delta. Look, I'm sure that the fact that I am top tier medallion status might have helped, but I always fly Delta because Atlanta's near me and it's easy and they're great and they're always great. And the Delta crew in Nashville leaves goodies on your seat. They're so sweet. And so you get onto the plane and there's a little note. It's like, welcome back, Emily, because well, I fly a lot. They're like, welcome back. And then they've got little treats. They always leave treats on the seat. The Sky Club at Nashville knows me at this point. They're like, hey, good to see you. I'm like, good to see you too. It made my night. I almost burst into tears because I was so stressed. I'm like, I'm going to make it on time. So at 2:30 this morning, are we on Mountain Time? Where are we? Are we Mountain Time? At 2:30 this morning, Mountain Time, because Arizona is like, what's daylight savings? Fuck that noise. It's dumb. When I finished wrapping up, I'm like, oh, I have to be up at like 6:30 in the morning. That's great. Did I travel first class? Yes, I did. So I was just thrilled. All right, we took a poll with 17,000 votes. Have you heard of the phrase "shit you up" before this trial? 90% of you said no. 9% of you said yes. We now know that there are 9% of you that took this. Oh, 17,000 votes. Y'all got it. We now know that there are 9% of you that live in the UK because all of you in the chat that have heard that phrase before are from the UK and you've heard it in the context of scare someone. So anyway, it was absolutely incredible. So later today, I will be writing a letter to Delta and just take care of it. Emily R. said, I'm a Delta flight attendant. Delta's so good. Love to help you get on a VIP status. Oh, okay. Emily R., my email is public. You're welcome to email me and let me know what I need to do. But I felt like I was very VIP status yesterday. And Delta says, do you know who she is? Yeah, they're like, we just need to put her butt in the seat. And here's the thing, if I'm Delta, if they get my ass into the seat on the flight last night, they don't have to worry about finding a place for my ass in the morning with me being like, I need to go. I think they've solved a problem by getting us onto our flights. They were helping others get to their real tight connections too, because the flight was running late. So it wasn't just me, but it just was so helpful. It was so helpful. So I absolutely am happy to shout out people who do a great job. And I've run into Delta flight attendants who are fans of the channel, which is always lovely. I love it when they're like, hi, I watch your channel. Because on my ticket, it says Emily Baker, not Emily D. Baker. And there's a lot of Emily Bakers in the world. So when it ends up being Emily D. Baker, it's very nice sometimes when people are like, oh my God, it's you. Hi, you're on my flight. I'm like, I am on your flight. Hello, it's good to see you. But that's not unusual to me either, because my mom was a flight attendant for so long. Most of my flying growing up, it was like, oh my God, hi, because they knew my mother. So it reminds me of my childhood and I love it. Yet another reason to love Delta. We need you. I needed to be on time. I bumped my flight back. I hate taking the last flight out at night because the chances that you might get stuck somewhere are real. It happens. It's life, it's travel, it's whatever. It's weather, it's because you can't control it. So normally I go earlier, but I didn't want to miss much yesterday, and I feel like it all worked out. Like the universe is just like, it's all working out. And I actually we got the Law Nerd hoodie on today. We're ready. Why do we need to know this, Jim? Chris, get a room. Jim and Chris should have gone out for coffee or a whiskey or something and just had a chat. They needed to catch up. I think they're trying to humanize Alec. I think they're trying to say, look, he would never do this. He's a loving family man. I honestly I don't find that super persuasive because we've seen so many cases where like, he was a loving father until he snapped and fucking murdered people. I'm not saying that's this case. I'm saying we've seen that case over and over and over again, just as a society. What I find more persuasive, truly, personally, is he didn't need the sympathy from the death of his wife and son because of how beloved his father was. And when hospice says he's on hospice, you've got a couple days, they're right. Hospice knows. So when Alec and his family are getting the call that his father is terminal and that is imminent, that timing, if he needed empathy, he was going to get it. People loved his father. His father worked at this law firm. I find that much more persuasive, truly. Oh, Emily, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We will absolutely check for an email. So I don't know if he just needed to buy time. I think there's an argument there. I think there's an argument that he could buy time. But also what's really interesting to me is he would always answer a call, and the defense elicited this. He would always answer a call from his wife. He was always answer a call from his kids. He was always on his phone. Well, if he's always answering calls from his family and he's trying to get in touch with his wife because she was supposed to go see his dad with him and then he was going to go see his mom or whatever, why not drive by the kennels? She was going to go with you. You know where she was. Why not just go that way? And that's confusing to me. That's confusing to me. So, not buying time, murders gets you more sympathy than an aging parent. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. So we'll see. When did the hospice order come? Everyone says that they heard that on June 7th. Everyone says June 7th. Let's see. He didn't know his dad would pass that soon, maybe. It's with hospice, once they tell you it's soon, it generally is soon. Like it generally is soon, but it's just weird. Anyway, there's a lot of, the thing is, this whole case is weird and there's a lot of questions and I still have a lot of questions. And then why was his phone off for that precise hour? So when we're starting to now build the questions, and we're starting to absolutely build the different pieces of the questions. And there's a lot of questions. And so they've attacked his alibi quite a lot. So we'll see. I don't know if that's going to be enough for this jury. And I don't know if they'll remember because we're so lost in the weeds. And the reason I remember this is because I talked to y'all about it all day. That's how I remember. Alec Murdaugh has 3 settings: charming, angry, or rocking. It seems that way. Cretin sounds like the French word cretin, which translates to idiot. Well, I realize the way I say it sometimes, when I say cretin, it definitely sounds like I'm yelling cretin. I can hear that. How many millions do you need to buy opioids? I have no idea. He should have been stocked up for life with the money he stole. I don't think all the money went to a drug habit, that's for sure. Emily, a ton of people reported that their relationship was awful per MMP, and she was trying to divorce. I think he is trying to refute that. He can't refute things that aren't in evidence. And there's no evidence. The prosecution's put in no evidence that his relationship with Maggie or Paul was anything but great. There's no evidence of anything else. So while I absolutely trust Mandy Matney's reporting, and I think she's right, I don't think the prosecution's going to get that into the case. And if they do, we're going to have to wait and see, because I haven't seen it yet. And we'll see. We'll see if it comes in. Gen Joe PDX, Mark Tilson said he was worried AM could fix a jury in the boat case. That's going to come in. As fucked as this trial is, especially the lack of objections, could have fixed being at the AG's office somehow. I think the AG's office truly is so close to this case. All they want to do is prosecute Alec Murdaugh, and they're kind of fixed in on it. But yes, there have been concerns about Alec fixing juries. There's a lot There's a lot. And again, they know this local jury better. So when I say things like, why are you making everybody stand up? It's probably regionally appropriate. It seems very odd to me because it's just very different from the way that I practiced. And I also have spent enough time on the internet to be nervous whenever it's like, let's point out your mom and them and your people and where you live and down the street and where you go to church and your phone numbers. That all makes me very nervous in a case that's being streamed, because now we're seeing the internet be the internet. You see people, not y'all, you're law nerds and y'all are smart and kind and empathetic and amazing. Y'all aren't gonna be like, oh, I saw a phone number on the internet, let me try to fucking call it with harassing phone calls. But there are people on the internet who do. So I get a little maybe overly protective about stuff like that now. The Brooks trial was easier to follow than this. Yes. Somebody asked, is that a towel rack by the door? No, they're blankets for the couch. So they're blankets for the couch. ADHD and an opioid addiction go hand in hand. I don't know about that. But I know a lot of ADHD self-medicates, but I can't speculate as to that. Cause I don't have that expertise outside of, what I've seen in the world. Happily spending my birthday with EDB, best way to celebrate. Though I will say, the way Alec's behavior is described is not subdued. It is not, he doesn't seem to be mellowed the way one would expect with an opioid, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't. Question, is AM under suicide watch while incarcerated? He's probably in protective custody because he's on trial, but they will determine his level of watch, but I'm sure he's in protective custody while he's in trial. And they're doing the independent transports and stuff. Tammy said, when this trial is over, the University of South Carolina School of Law and the South Carolina Bar Association needs to speak to reassure us that these lawyers are not indicative of how trials should be conducted. I don't think they will, but they should say something about that. Well, the South Carolina Bar did disbar Alec, and I think there are more coming. Cami said, do you also yell at the TV with characters that do dumb stuff? Yes. I feel like watching a horror movie with you would be hilarious. Yes. I narrate everything. It won't surprise you that when my brother was playing college water polo, I almost got kicked out of a number of games for screaming at the referees. I'm that person at a sporting event as well. Yeah. And at a concert. Yep. I try not to talk in movies when I go to the movies, though, because I try not to talk in the movies when I go to the movies. I very much prefer watching the movies at my house where I can talk. My son is the exact same way, and we just chat, which is why we put closed captioning on everything, so we can chat and have the closed captioning on. The Brooks trial was easier to follow. It was. Brooks was extreporous, but the prosecution was so focused and linear and clear, it made it easy to follow amongst all the fuckery that Brooks was throwing up there against the wall. Our 20-people group missed connection flight to Bulgaria to Newark via Germany, and our first flight delayed, so we had to stay the night. So much stress. 20 people is a lot of people to reroute. That would be very, very stressful. And then international travel makes everyone tired. Pampered Shelley says, my sister got me hooked on Delta Comfort Plus. It is a great option. Could it have been about keeping his father from knowing he passed before the financial crimes were discovered? Did he not? Rain, yes, he did pass before the financial crimes were discovered, or at least were made public. Alec was confronted June 7th. His father died June 10th. The murders happened June 7th. Everybody seems to think the murder weapons are buried with the dad. I don't know. It's like something out of a novel. This is the first time I've watched a case on your channel. I do enjoy the commentary. Thank you. You're welcome. I know not everybody does when I'm just screaming at the screen, but all of us are exhausted at this point. And this jury was promised a 3-week trial. And the attorneys, I don't know if the attorneys have ever done the trials this long. I have to imagine they have. They're very experienced attorneys. They have to know how wearing it can get on a jury. And if the juries feel like they're in the weeds, they're going to be mad at everybody for wasting their time. They're just going to be frustrated. The juror who said that he had a hard stop at 3 weeks because of work has apparently sorted that out, because now they're invested too. It's like all of us. We talked about it yesterday. It's like the TV show that you loved at the beginning and then somewhere in the middle, it just all went to shit, but you're still invested in the last 3 seasons because you started at the beginning and you need to know how it ends. Yeah. That's where we're at. That's where we're at in this trial. We're all invested now, and we're like, fuck, what's going to happen? Though I will say the quick bit summary, and this one will be late because of my travel, but the quick bit summaries this week will be easier to put together because less happened. It was just less info. I mean, we got Maybe Mark Tinsley will testify. I think it'll be less snappy. But at the 404, we got, well, it's a lot of papers. Maybe you're confused. We did have some sassy moments. And now we're just living for sassy moments and witnesses with nice deep voices. That's literally where we've landed this trial. We're like, okay, real forge, testify longer. I feel like they only get 3 objections a day and they don't want to use them up. It really does feel like they're afraid of the objections, but the judge has been like sustained. Normally the judge, did you notice the change in attitude at the end of this morning's session? The judge normally says, don't lead the witness, and he had switched to sustained. I think the judge is just as tired of Creighton leading everybody everywhere too. Blazed Goddess said, my daughter 13 and I do the same with movies. She's a law nerd and a horror fan. You're the best. Well, thank you. Why cover for someone that owes you money? It's gone. It felt weird. At the end of that testimony, it just felt a little weird. This case is so confusing. How are the jurors handling this? They're probably annoyed. I would be, aren't you? I'm annoyed. We're all annoyed. B. Vargas, love you, EDB. Thank you. Love you too. Crime nerd here. My gut feeling is that he's guilty, but will get off due to a messed up investigation and a joke of a court case. It's possible. Here's where I'm at the end of, or in the middle of day 14. Something is sus. I have a lot of questions. I don't know if he pulled the trigger. The timing is too close. He would have heard something. I don't have enough answers, and I have way too many questions. That's where I'm at. Why do we think Alec would be needing a lawyer at this point? Anytime the police want to talk to you, you need a lawyer. That's all. Unless the police are like, oh, your car's been stolen. Where did you last see it parked? Then it's probably not an issue. Or you're calling them because you've been a victim of a crime. But if the police are asking you about a crime that has happened that you have discovered, you're probably going to want to talk to a lawyer, especially if you are the only surviving person when there were 3 people there. Anybody else forget that Alec is actually in custody? He doesn't act or look like a criminal on trial in a courthouse. He acts like he owns the courthouse, and I think that says a lot for him acting normal under difficult circumstances. We're not just in the weeds. We've gone all the way deep into the Everglades. Correct. No one has mentioned the lady who cooked dinner for years. Yeah, I want to know too. Where's Blanca? Blanca made dinner the night of the murders. I have questions. And if they call Blanca to testify, all of us are going to go, oh, what does Blanca have to say? I want to hear from Tinsley. We're going to hear from Palmetto State Bank. I want to hear from Blanca. When did she leave the house that night? Because they need to wrap up that loose end. I need to hear from Cousin Eddie. Those are the things I'm looking forward to in this trial. We're going to hear from the Emmy at some point. I don't know what else we're going to hear. I think Jim and the defense should remember that there are plenty of famous murderers who seem like great guys and could never have done this. You aren't helping your case in that viewpoint. It depends on the jury. Can't wait to see how they portray this in the movie we know is coming. I mean, there's going to be 7 more docuseries, movies, and all the rest of it, but the trial is... Maybe they'll make it more clear in the movie version. Alec Murdaugh's life was a lie. Yes. He smiled and feigned friendship and pretended to care about those he loved, all while stealing from them and ruining lives. Yes. He's a despicable, heartless human being. I agree. Is he a murderer? Don't know yet. The unnecessary rambling taking place by all parties in this case is painful. Agreed. It's why I find myself talking over them. If only this case was tried in Waukesha, it would definitely be different. But in Waukesha, we don't have all the good old boys club. It's a whole different dynamic when we've got this legacy family and legacy law firm and money, and his buddies are just walking around chatting with the police at the murder scene. And they don't want to serve a search warrant because they might disrupt everybody. It's bizarre. It's just bizarre. It is. All right, y'all, we have about an hour left for lunch. I will be back at 2:10 Eastern Standard Time. I have to cut and take a break. I will see you back here. This will go right over to that chat if you want to head over and chat until we get back from lunch. Start talking about who you think we'll see this afternoon. I think probably Tinsley and the dude from Palmetto State Bank. But they call everybody like they're drawing them from a hat, like the chat said yesterday, because chat is bae. So with that, it is time to go. I will see you after lunch. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a law nerd. Cheers to what should have been the second to last day for trial. We should have been in closing arguments tomorrow, and we're nowhere fucking close. I think we have at least another 2 weeks. We're gonna go through all of February with this trial. I was not prepared for that at all.
You can find all the Law Nerd goodies at lawnerdshop.com. Connect with me on social media at the Emily D. Baker. And don't forget to check out my podcasts, The Emily Show, and the new podcast, Quick Bits. summarizing everything I talk about on my Tuesday and Thursday live streams. You know, when you only have time for just the quick bits.